Chapter 355. Let's do that. The man rubbed his hands and said, "Leave the delivery to me." "Where are you going?" A faint voice suddenly sounded in the room. The man said impatiently, "Didn't I just tell you? Go to the Chin family, Chin." Halfway through his words, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. If he remembered correctly, there was no woman in their group. So where did this woman's voice come from? The door suddenly rumbled and shattered into a pile of wood dregs, which then scattered all over the ground. Xiaoqing clapped her hands and calmly walked in. She glanced around and asked coldly, "Where's my son?" The room was silent. No one knew how Xiaoqing came here. What did they do to make Xiaoqing come here? Kill her. The leader gritted his teeth and said. The people around him immediately rushed forward. 2 people walked out from Xiaoqing's side, one on the left and one on the right. One was Dai and the other was Yan Qiyue. Yan Qiyue stood in front and raised her hand. She clenched her fist and squeezed the air around one of the people. Blood and flesh splattered all over the floor. It was a horrible scene. On the other side, Dai had rushed into the crowd. His fingernails were as sharp as blades. Anyone who touched his fingernails would have a large piece of flesh torn off. Some people had already noticed that he was different from the others. They immediately screamed, "Zombie!" Xiaoqing took a step forward. The vines followed her movements and drilled out of the ground. This group of people was too weak to withstand a single blow. Lin Qifan felt that something was wrong. He swallowed his saliva in horror and stepped back silently. When Xiaoqing and the others didn't notice him, he had already retreated to the warehouse in the backyard. More than a dozen paranormals couldn't last more than 5 minutes in the hands of Xiaoqing and the other 2 people. Ignoring the blood on the floor, Xiaoqing said anxiously, "Let's find the baby first." At that moment, Little Bun was trying to save himself. Before he could figure out if he could crawl out of the window, Little Bun heard the sound of the door being unlocked. Immediately after, Lin Qifan pushed open the door and walked in. The Little Bun was full of vigilance, but he still looked confused. He whispered, "Are you here to play with me? But I'm in a bad mood right now, so I don't want to play." Lin Qifan still had the smell of blood on him. He looked at the Little Bun with a dark expression and walked forward without saying a word. The Little Bun was very nervous, but he didn't show it on his face. He leaned into the corner, and before he could say anything, he heard Xiaoqing's voice. "Son, where are you?" The Little Bun's eyes immediately lit up. His mother had come to save him. "Mama, I'm here." As soon as Little Bun finished speaking, Lin Qifan rushed over, as if trying to make Little Bun a hostage. Yiye had been squatting on the side motionless. When she saw Lin Qifan rushing over, Yiye immediately jumped up and slapped Lin Qifan's face with her rabbit paw. Lin Qifan was an ordinary person, so how could he withstand a high-level mutated animal's foot? He was slapped to the wall by Yiye's paw. Xiaoqing heard the noise and quickly ran over. She was surprised and happy to see Little Bun squatting in the room. She quickly went up and hugged Little Bun. Her voice was choked with sobs. "You scared me to death. You scared me to death. Mama, don't be scared, don't be scared." Little Bun gently patted Xiaoqing's back and whispered, "The baby is fine, look." Xiaoqing hugged Little Bun tightly. She felt tears in her eyes, but there wasn't even a drop of tear. She only breathed heavily and couldn't help but choke with sobs. Her heart was on the verge of breaking down. Chapter 356. She had never been so scared before. Even though she had almost died a few times, she had never been so scared. The Little Bun was more important than her life. Anyone who wanted to take her baby away was the same as taking her life. Xiaoqing hugged the Little Bun tightly, unwilling to let go for even a second. Seeing this, Lin Qifan tried to leave. He crawled out from the corner, but before he could take 2 steps, he was kicked back by Yiye. The noise woke Xiaoqing up. When Xiaoqing turned to look at Lin Qifan, her eyes were red with anger. At that moment, she really wanted to tear him into pieces. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to quench the hatred in her heart. Lin Qifan felt a strong murderous aura from Xiaoqing. He shrank back in fear, as though he was walking on the edge of death. His heart was about to explode from the stimulation. Lin Qifan was very scared. He didn't want to die. He hadn't lived long enough. He wanted to continue living. Xiaoqing hated him to the core. Step by step, she walked towards him. Lin Qifan tried to escape, but Xiaoqing stepped on his leg. Xiaoqing used a lot of strength in her kick, and Lin Qifan's leg bones were instantly shattered. He screamed in pain, and beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. Don't kill me. Lin Qifan hugged his leg and rolled on the ground in pain. He finally calmed himself down. Then he crawled 2 steps and hugged Xiaoqing's leg. Ah Qing, even if you don't look at anything else, for the sake of our past relationship, please let me go. I swear, as long as you let me go, I will immediately leave the capital and the entire north. I will never appear in front of you again. Xiaoqing lowered her head and glanced at him. She couldn't help but say, disgusting. She had never seen such a disgusting man. Back then, she must have been blind to fall in love with such a man. Lin Qifan didn't care about what Xiaoqing said. He hugged Xiaoqing's leg tightly and said with tears and snot, "You know how much I love you. For the sake of our relationship, please let me go. I was forced by them. They threatened me. They wanted to kill me. I had no choice but to do this." Xiaoqing couldn't take it anymore. She kicked him away. Yin Qiyue and Dai walked over. They glanced at Lin Qifan. Yin Qiyue said coldly, "Ah Qing, kill him. I feel disgusted just by looking at him. Did he have a heart or not? How could he do such a thing again and again? And then beg for her forgiveness with such a disgusting face after the fact?" In any case, they had learned something new. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Lin Qifan wanted to hug Xiaoqing's leg and cry. Unfortunately, Xiaoqing despised him for being dirty and refused to let him near her. Xiaoqing looked at the crying Lin Qifan and suddenly smiled. "Tell me, what did you do wrong? If you tell me clearly, I might spare your life." Lin Qifan was pleasantly surprised. He hurriedly said, "I really know that I was wrong. I shouldn't have done such a thing because of their threats. I almost harmed you and your son. It's only right that you hate me. I'm willing to compensate you, apologize to you, take care of you and be a slave." "You know that's not what I want to hear," Xiaoqing said calmly. Lin Qifan gritted his teeth and suddenly slapped himself. "I'm worse than a beast. I was possessed. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault." As he spoke, he slapped himself. He used quite a lot of strength. Soon his face was swollen. Xiaoqing kicked him and said softly, "All right, I forgive you. Don't worry. I won't kill you." Chapter 357. Without waiting for Lin Qifan to breathe a sigh of relief, Xiaoqing stepped on Lin Qifan's other leg. There weren't any wounds on this leg, so Xiaoqing crushed his leg bones. Not only his leg bones, but his arms were also crushed bit by her. Finally, she crushed the bones below his neck. In the end, almost all of Lin Qifan's bones were crushed by Xiaoqing. Those that couldn't be crushed were crushed by her. In the beginning, Lin Qifan would still beg for mercy. When the pain reached its peak, he would even curse. But in the end, he was exhausted and didn't speak anymore. He was just like a dying dog, lying on the ground, panting heavily and moaning softly. If it weren't for the moaning and the occasional twitching of his body, Xiaoqing would really think that he was dead. Because all the bones in his body were crushed, Lin Qifan was like a pile of mud, lying on the ground. Xiaoqing pulled out her military knife and cut his face again and again. Every cut was so deep that the bones could be seen, and the flesh was torn apart. That hatred, that sadness, that anger, all of it dissipated like smoke under the blade. When she finally cut off Lin Qifan's tongue, Xiaoqing suddenly felt that the depression in her heart had completely disappeared. After Xiaoqing finished everything, she then thought of a very serious problem. The scene was too bloody and Little Bun would be scared. She hurriedly carried Little Bun and walked out, bringing Yin Qiyue and Dai with her. Only a pile of flesh was left on the ground. Lin Qifan's bones were all crushed and his face was unrecognizable. Even his tongue was cut off. He could only lie there and wait for death. Xiaoqing slightly curved the corners of her lips. She promised that she wouldn't kill him. But in this world, there were too many things that were scarier than death. For example, living a life worse than death. However, Lin Qifan did not die. He had a superpower. which was an extraordinary recovery ability. It was an extremely selfish superpower. Although it was weak, it allowed him to survive. But he was better off dead than alive. From then on, there was no Lin Qifan in the world. He was just a beggar, dragging his rotten body and begging for food on the streets of the capital. He didn't have a tongue. Other than his hands, his body was almost like a pile of meat paste. When he begged for food, he used his hands to crawl forward. Sometimes he would think about the first time he met Xiaoqing a long time ago. Her cold eyes suddenly opened with a hint of danger, like a blooming poisonous flower that captured his heart. He stood in the light while she sat in the shadows. As the light and darkness intertwined, for the first time, he went against his conscience and came into contact with trouble. As for betrayal, Lin Qifan thought it was probably because he was too greedy. At first he was a little unwilling. Why was she better than him in everything? Even a man like him needed her to support him. Later, he wanted her to have a better life. He didn't want to be weaker than her, so he wanted to earn more. In the end, his greed led him step by step towards destruction. Perhaps this was his nature. Even if he fell in love with someone, the person he loved the most was still himself. Other than himself, he could sacrifice everything else. It wasn't easy for Xiaoqing to find her son. After that, she became a little abnormal. She started to like hugging the little bun all the time, whether it was when she was sleeping, eating, or walking. Every single moment. If she left little bun for more than a minute, she would panic. On the way back, she hugged little bun so tightly that little bun almost couldn't breathe. Chapter 358. Yan Qiue contacted Mr. Qin and dragged the bodies of the superpowered people back to try to identify them. She wanted to find out who was targeting Xiaoqing, who had a grudge against Xiaoqing. What was so deep that the other party didn't hesitate to set up a trap to kill Xiaoqing? Xiaoqing was very confused. Who had she offended? In the end, after much consideration, there was only one person left, Wu Buping. Previously, she had interfered in the matter between Wu Buping and Zhu Machun, causing Wu Buping's plan to target Zhu Machun to fail. Wu Buping must have hated her. However, such a small matter shouldn't make Wu Buping want to kill her so urgently, right? Xiaoqing scratched her head and sat on the sofa with little bun in her arms, waiting for the results. Finally, Mr. Qin came in and frowned. I can't find them. I asked my subordinates to compare all the superpowered people recorded in the entire capital, but they couldn't find any of them. It seems that the person who did this is very cautious, Mr. Qin said with a headache. I still need some time to investigate carefully. Check the superpowered people who have been in and out of the capital recently. Maybe I can find a few of them. Xiaoqing didn't think that Mr. Qin would be able to find them immediately. After all, if he wasn't a fool, he wouldn't hire a group of people who were easily exposed to be assassins. Besides, she already had a suspect. Other than Wu Buping, there shouldn't be a second person who had the ability to set up such a trap. Wu Buping was really ruthless. He wanted to kill her for such a small matter. He even sent so many superpowered people who were unclear about the background to set up such a meticulous trap. If Yiya hadn't been quick-witted and left a mark, she really might have gone to this Hongmen banquet alone after receiving the letter. However, Wu Buping was destined not to be able to kill her. Because even if she went to the Hongmen banquet alone, with so few people, they couldn't kill her. Wu Buping underestimated her too much. Unless Wu Buping used the entire Mad Demon group to set up a trap, Xiaoqing wasn't afraid at all. Could Wu Buping send more than 2 level 5 superpowered people to kill her? Without more than 2 level 5 superpowered people, no one could stop her. Sorry to trouble you, Xiaoqing said sincerely. Father Qin said with a cold face. The child was kidnapped from my house. I have to bear a lot of responsibility, so you don't have to thank me. Xiaoqing's mouth twitched. She wasn't prepared to thank him. Father Qin continued. I heard from the old man that he's almost done researching the strange fog you gave him last time. When he comes back, we can talk about it in detail. Old Master Qin was probably as anxious as Xiaoqing. He immediately led a group of people to look for the little bun. Although Papa Qin had already sent a message to inform him that the little bun had been found, he didn't rush back so quickly. Old Master Qin returned faster than Father Qin had expected. The moment he reached the door, he couldn't help but shout, "Where's the baby? Where's the baby? Didn't you say you found it?" "Grandpa, I'm here." The little bun was snuggling in Xiao Qing's arms. When he heard the sound, he quickly stuck his head out. Old Master Qin ran in like a gust of wind. His heart ached for the little bun, and he wanted to hug him. But when he remembered that he had just lost the little bun under his nose, he was too embarrassed to hug him. The little bun hurriedly went over. He cupped Old Master Qin's chin and kissed him. Then he said, "Grandpa, are you worried about the baby? Look at the baby. He's fine." "Sigh, the baby is so obedient." Old Master Qin's heart ached terribly. He gave the little bun a loving kiss before they sat down to talk. After talking about the kidnapping, Old Master Qin said, "The results of the inspection of the fog are indeed out. It's already a type of chemical weapon. I'm going to send people to keep an eye on Wu Booping and the Mad Demon Mercenary Group. I think they must be doing similar experiments in secret." Father Qin nodded. "Otherwise, it's impossible for them to develop this fog and directly make it into a weapon. This can only be made after many experiments." Xiao Qing's thoughts were almost all on the little bun. She only said, "I'll leave everything to the two of you. I think the Mad Demon Mercenary Group is very dangerous. It's best to send more people to keep an eye on them just in case." Old Master Qin nodded and said, "We'll settle this matter tomorrow. The most important thing now is to investigate. The entire capital should know about the people targeting you and the baby. You're living in the Qin family, so there aren't many people who would dare to make a move." Xiao Qing thought for a moment and said, "I want to take the child and leave the capital first." Before she could finish speaking, Old Master Qin's eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. He was expressionless, but his voice sounded a little aggrieved. "Is it because of this kidnapping incident?" He was indeed in the wrong this time. He shouldn't have left the little bun alone outside. Otherwise, such a thing wouldn't have happened. Old Master Qin's confidence was very low, and his mood worsened. He had promised Xiao Qing that he would take good care of the little bun, but in the end, the little bun was kidnapped. More importantly, Xiao Qing was the one who found the little bun and saved the little bun. This made the old man even less confident. But he really didn't want the little bun to leave. He liked the little bun very much, just like how he liked his own grandson. But now that the little bun was leaving, he didn't know when he would be able to see him again. The capital was so far away from S-City. Xiao Qing and the little bun couldn't come over every few days. First of all, there wasn't enough time. This meant that it would be very difficult for him to see the little bun again. Old Master Qin was very dispirited. He felt wronged and pitiful. He huddled in the corner and didn't say a word, because he knew that he had no right to ask the little bun to stay. Seeing Old Master Qin depressed and sitting in the corner, looking very pitiful, Xiao Qing couldn't help but say, "There's one more thing that I need to trouble you with." Old Master Qin pulled himself together and asked, "What is it?" Xiao Qing smiled and said, "Can you find me a house in the capital? I want to buy a house." Chapter 359. Old Master Qin immediately perked up. Xiao Qing was going to buy a house in the capital? Did that mean that she was going to settle down in Jing City? As long as Xiao Qing settled down in Jing City, he would be able to see the little bun more often. It was a great thing. Old Master Qin was very happy about Xiao Qing's kindness. He waved his hand and said, "You can go back to the S-City survivor base. I promise that I will find a good house for you by the time you come back." "Thank you, old master." Xiao Qing smiled. She liked the Qin family from the bottom of her heart. They were really good to them. Before they left, Qin Zishi held a farewell party for Xiao Qing and the others. Then she reluctantly sent Xiao Qing and the others to the gate. She even wanted to send Xiao Qing and the others back to the S-City survivor base. But in the end, Xiao Qing still rejected him. Giving each other gifts was like taking off one's pants to fart. It was unnecessary. Then the group went back to the S-City survivor base. When they arrived, it was afternoon. There were not many outsiders in the base. After entering the base, they found that there were not many people in the base. Xiaoqing asked someone and found out that most of the people in the base had been sent to clean up the original S-City. Because of the rapid evolution of zombies, the current S-City survivor base was becoming more and more unsafe. Therefore, the higher-ups of the base set their sights on the original S-City. They were trying to clean up S-City and rebuild the defense system. Then they would move all the people in the S-City survivor base into the city. In this way, the safety index would be much higher. However, it was not easy to clean up a city, especially a city that had been occupied by zombies for a long time. Zombies ran rampant in the city. There were third-level zombies, fourth-level zombies, and even fifth-level zombies. It was said that a few days ago, the base first cleared the zombies near the electric industry building and took control of the signal tower in S-City. Now the people in the area had already recovered their communication. The base was currently cleaning up the area around the electric industry building. They had to clear out all the zombies and then move back into S-City. From Xiaoqing's point of view, it was necessary. The current protective measures in the S-City survivor base were simply too crude. Once they encountered a large zombie horde, the entire base would be trampled to pieces by the zombie horde. After moving back to S-City, at least their safety was guaranteed. They didn't have to worry about zombies attacking the city in the middle of the night when they were asleep. After receiving the news, Xiaoqing left with her friends. No matter what, she was about to leave the S-City survivor base and move into the capital survivor base. She had nothing to do with what happened here. When they returned, Fu Jingma was cooking. Upon hearing that Xiaoqing and the rest were back, Fu Jingma stopped cooking and ran out with his apron. Fu Jingma was pleasantly surprised. "You guys are back?" Xiaoqing nodded and said, "I'm going to pack up and move to the Kyoto survivor base." Her expression was very calm, but Fu Jingma was shocked. However, he still said seriously, "I'll go wherever you go. It's okay." Xiaoqing didn't say anything. She just asked Yan Hanqing to come over and cook. After dinner, the group went back to their own homes to sleep. The next morning, Xiaoqing took her friends and prepared to leave. Before leaving, she had to go to the base and cancel the registration. Then, she would go to the capital and register again. Chapter 360. In the lobby, after Xiaoqing explained her purpose, the girl in charge of registration was in a dilemma. It was as troublesome as changing one's nationality. She flipped through Xiaoqing's information and said, "Theoretically, you can cancel your household registration, but what?" Gu Panpan, who was short-tempered, asked. In order to prevent people who change their permanent residence every few days and bring unnecessary trouble to the staff, the base has a rule that if you want to cancel your household registration, you must have enough contribution points. But you don't have enough, the pretty girl said embarrassedly. If you don't have enough contribution points, you can't cancel your household registration. Xiaoqing frowned. She never knew there was such a rule. It was really troublesome. Then Xiaoqing asked, "How many contribution points do we need?" "Not much. If you all want to cancel your household registration, you need more than 100 contribution points," the girl said seriously. Xiaoqing thought for a while and asked, "Is there a way to earn contribution points quickly?" "Yes, you can complete important tasks such as clearing the zombies in S-City this time. As long as you clear a certain number of zombies, you can get enough contribution points," the girl said gently. The girl said very gently. Xiaoqing immediately made the decision. "Accept this mission for us." It was a piece of cake for her to clear a certain number of zombies. She just needed to take her air dye and find a remote place to shout. Then there would be endless zombies coming to kill her. However, when they were leaving, Gu Panpan was still angry. "Have you heard that other bases need contribution points to cancel their household registration? They are obviously bullying us. Seeing that we are leaving, they deliberately asked us to do something for the base." Xiaoqing rubbed her head and said, "Clear a certain number of zombies. This task is quite fast. Don't worry." They went back to pack up and prepared to enter the abandoned S-City. The entire S-City had been occupied by zombies for a long time. It was difficult to drive all the zombies out. As long as there was one zombie left, they would be doomed when they moved back to S-City. After all, there were many ordinary people in the S-City survivor base. If one or two zombies jumped out from the corner and bit one of the survivors, then the entire base would be doomed. Therefore, it was particularly troublesome to search. They had to ensure that the entire city was completely under the control of the humans before they could declare it a success. Therefore, the people who came to hunt zombies were divided into 3 groups. Some people were responsible for the first round of rough hunting, eliminating most of the zombies that were walking on the surface. The second group was responsible for patrolling around, searching every nook and cranny of the place that could still be found. The third type of people was the most important. They carefully inspected wave after wave, looking for fish that had slipped through the net. After 3 waves of people, it was still not over. The base would send people over to look for any stray zombies, kill all the zombies they could see, and bring them back safely to the base. When Xiaoqing and the others accepted the task, the base had already been strangled for a period of time. The power plant was the main target, and a large area around it had been cleaned up. Therefore, Xiaoqing and the others found a place and began to clean up the zombies. Low-level zombies were a piece of cake for Xiaoqing and the others. They even played do diju while killing zombies. Because 2 people were enough to kill zombies, the others were playing cards. Whoever lost the most would be responsible for cleaning up the zombies for a period of time. Chapter 361. Even so, it only took them 3 days to clear all the zombies nearby. Later on, as long as there were zombies, they would run away when they saw them. After all, they were scared of being killed. Xiaoqing was usually the one who cleaned up the zombies, because she didn't like to play cards. Moreover, she was the most lethal one among all of them. It could be said that Xiaoqing was like a meat grinder, constantly killing zombies. Within a few days, they had collected enough zombie nuclei for contribution points. After collecting enough nuclei, Xiaoqing took them back. She went to the hall and reported the number of zombies they had killed in the past 2 days. Then she took out the nuclei as evidence and quietly waited for them to report the result. The face of the girl in charge of registration changed. She looked at the nuclei and couldn't help but ask, "Did you kill all these?" Xiaoqing nodded and said, "We should have gathered enough contribution points, right?" Unexpectedly, the girl hesitated for a while and then said, "Not enough." Xiaoqing frowned and asked, "Didn't you calculate at that time? How could it not be enough? We killed according to the number you gave us, and there were even some extra." The girl said, "At that time it was enough, but I miscalculated. It's not that all of you need 100 contribution points, it's that each of you needs 100 contribution points. That's why it's only enough for one person's contribution points." Xiaoqing's face immediately sank. She didn't expect that the base would do such a thing. This was clearly the base's intention. That was, they wouldn't let them go even if they acted shamelessly. Before, everyone only needed 100 contribution points, but now it suddenly became 100 contribution points for each person. Wasn't this playing with them? This was simply bullying them on purpose. Before Xiaoqing could get angry, the girl said, "And this way, you can't prove that these nuclei were all hunted by you this time, so I can't." "What the F***ck is this?" Gu Panpan had a bad temper. She immediately jumped out and pointed at the girl's nose. Previously, everyone needed 100 contribution points. Now, everyone needs 100 contribution points. Do you have to be so greedy? Gu Panpan slammed the counter and said, "If you don't give me an explanation today, I won't let you off." The girl wanted to cry but had no tears. She said softly, "I really didn't decide this. It was decided by the higher-ups. You're not done with me. I can't do anything about it. I'm just following the rules." "Is this how the rules work?" Gu Panpan sneered, then said, "You still want us to prove that we killed these zombies? This is the same as asking me to prove whether or not I'm a woman. If this isn't nonsense, then what is?" The girl stuttered for a long time before she said, "It's not that I want to make things difficult for you. It's the request of the higher-ups, including checking if the zombies were killed in S-City." Seeing this, Gu Panpan sneered. "To put it bluntly, you just don't want to let us go, right? Why are you still looking for excuses?" The girl stopped talking. Even if she asked again, she would only say, "It's the rule of the higher-ups." Gu Panpan was so angry that she stomped her feet. The key was, how could they prove that they killed those zombies in S-City? Should they cut off the zombie's head every time they killed a zombie and bring it back for her to see? Xiaoqing patted Gu Ponpon's shoulder and shook his head at her. The whole base of S-City was under the command of the base chief. Of course, whatever he said would be the law. They didn't even have room to refute. This time, it was obvious that it was too troublesome to clean up S-City, so the base chief needed a lot of fighters. Xiaoqing and the others' fighting ability was also very high in the base, which could be seen from their completion records. It should be a normal rule that they needed contribution points to cancel their household registration, but everyone still needed contribution points. It was probably a temporary decision made by the higher-ups after reading the information of Xiaoqing and the others. After all, it was not easy to find such good fighters. It would be a pity if they let them go. It was better to make use of the waste and let them kill more zombies in S-City. This way, the base would save more trouble. Look, this was such a smart idea. Xiaoqing's eyes were cold. She knocked on the window and asked, 100 contribution points per person, right? There won't be any changes. Yes. The pretty girl hurriedly said. As long as you bring back enough nuclei, you can pass the inspection and get contribution points. You don't need to prove that these zombies are from S-City? Xiaoqing said lightly. The girl coughed and said, I believe you. Bah, what were you doing earlier? Chapter 362. Like thieves, the group of paranormals slipped into an empty shop along the corner. Only then did they breathe a sigh of relief and sit down to rest. The leader took some compressed biscuits and mixed them with water for everyone. While eating, he asked the only girl in the team, What's the completion rate of the mission now? The girl calculated and then said with a bitter face, It's just close to 70%. Immediately, someone said in surprise, We've been in S-City for more than a week. How come the completion rate is still so low? Another person chimed in. That's right, I remember it was 60% 3 days ago. Xiaojing, did you calculate it wrong? The girl named Xiaojing almost burst into tears at that time. I didn't calculate it wrong. It's just that we've been robbed too many times in the past 2 days. Speaking of this, everyone was silent. After a long time, one person cursed, Motherfucker, where did this group of perverts come from? Can't they let us live? We just encircled a nest of zombies, and they came out and harvested all the nuclei like magic. Well, what else can we say when we're not as good as them? Let's get to work. After resting for a while, the leader stood up and said, The sooner we finish the mission, the sooner we can go back to the base. The group of people left the temporary resting place and continued to kill zombies. They were lucky. Not long after they left the resting place, they encountered a group of second-level and third-level zombies, but there were a lot of them. Get ready. The leader raised his hand and quietly approached, followed by a group of excited paranormals. There were 30 to 40 zombies in this wave. If they killed all of them, their completion rate of the mission would increase by 1%. A group of people quickly surrounded them. They activated their special abilities and prepared for a beautiful wave of siege. Before they could do anything, a man and a woman suddenly descended from the sky. The woman was muscular and looked very strong. The man was so fast that he almost pulled out an afterimage. As soon as the two of them entered the zombie crowd, they were like two meat grinders, crazily slaughtering. After the two of them, there was a very handsome and serious-looking man. He raised his hand, and a thunder and lightning appeared. The zombies that were enveloped by the electric net were directly electrocuted into ashes, leaving only the shining crystal in the ashes. The higher-leveled ones were also burnt, emitting a strange smell. Soon, the group of zombies was cleared by the three people. After the woman who looked like a King Kong Barbie collected all the nuclei, she waved her hand and said, It's done. Next place, let's go. The three of them were like the wind, coming and going in a hurry, leaving behind a group of people who were dumbfounded as they stared at their departing backs. After a long while, Xiaojing couldn't help swearing. It's them again. Damn it. On the other side, Xiaoqing, Xiaotong, Yin Qiyue, and Little Bun had just finished a wave of killing. A small zombie group led by a level 4 zombie was cleared by them. As soon as they entered S-City, Xiaoqing divided their small team into groups. The Gu siblings and Yan Hanqing were responsible for wandering around and killing zombies. Shi Xiaotong and Yan Qiyue were responsible for clearing the fixed zombie groups, such as large shopping malls and schools, which were densely packed with zombies. As for the rest, Erdai was simply left alone. S-City was originally Erdai's hometown. As soon as he came back, he was like a fish in water. He went everywhere to find the high-level zombie leaders. If he could defeat them, he would kill them. If he couldn't, he would call his friends to help him. In short, life was very happy. Chapter 363. Every afternoon, the whole team would gather at the designated place and pile up the nuclei. After verifying them, the contribution would be calculated. Now we have 1018 level 2 zombie nuclei, 532 level 3 zombie nuclei, and 41 level 4 zombie nuclei. After calculating, Gu Panpan said to Xiaoqing, "According to the calculation, we now have enough contribution points for 5 people." The conversion ratio between contribution points and nuclei given by the staff was simply ridiculous. If it were an ordinary team of paranormals, they might not be able to gather enough nuclei even after several months. Unfortunately, they encountered a group of abnormal people. The weakest one among them, Xiaobao, was already a level 3 paranormal. A group of level 4 paranormals and Xiaoqing, who was a level 5 paranormals, were simply a zombie harvester. Let's wait for one more day. If we still haven't gathered enough nuclei by tomorrow afternoon, we will gather together and find a place with a lot of zombies to clean up. Xiaoqing gritted his teeth and said coldly. She had a good impression of S-City. After all, she had lived there for a long time. And it was also the place where she met Gu Panpan and the others. It was very meaningful. However, what happened in the base had erased all her good impression of it. Now she just wanted to leave S-City as soon as possible and get away from this place completely. Except for that, she had no second thoughts. After finding a safe place to sleep for a night, the group separated again. Xiaoqing carried Xiaobao on his back and took Xiaotong and Yan Qiyue to the next destination. This time, he had his eyes on a large market far from the city center. There was a very long pedestrian street here. After the apocalypse, the movement of zombies was very high. There were many zombies living here, and many of them could be considered mobile zombies. If they could clean up from one end of the market to the other, it was very likely that their task would be completed. However, it was very difficult, especially when there was a large number of zombies on the opposite side. After passing through the threshold, Xiaoqing found that there were not many zombies walking on the street, and most of the shops were open. After all, it was daytime, so those zombies didn't come out. Most of them were hiding, waiting for night to come. Xiaoqing didn't want to wait, because when night came, those zombies' strength would be a little bit higher, and they would be very troublesome to clean up. The disadvantage of daytime was that they had to look for zombies in the rooms, and they had to look for zombies one by one, behind the curtains, under the shelves, and so on. In short, zombies could be found in all kinds of strange places, which was quite interesting. Xiaoqing led her friends to look for zombies to kill. The speed at which she killed zombies was frightening. Her vines shot out with a whoosh and skewered a zombie into a stick of candied hawthorn. Soon, those zombies jumped out by themselves. Xiaoqing and the others only needed to walk around to kill a lot of zombies. According to this speed, tomorrow may not be enough. Xiaoqing sighed and then said. Yan Qiyue had to comfort her. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2 days later. It's normal that it's troublesome to leave the base. After a short rest, Xiaoqing went to kill zombies. After a while, she suddenly heard Erdai's sharp voice calling them. The group of people didn't say anything, leaving the zombies that they were killing, and ran towards the direction of Erdai's voice. Chapter 364. Luckily, Erdai didn't like to be too far away from Xiaoqing, so he had been wandering around nearby. When Xiaoqing and the others heard the noise, they hurried over. Erdai was unable to hold on any longer. The ones besieging him were 2 zombies, 2 identical zombies. These 2 zombies were wearing shabby school uniforms. One on the left and one on the right, they besieged Erdai. They looked exactly the same. The only difference was that one had a red left eye, while the other had a red right eye. When they were still alive, they should have been twins. Probably because they were twins, they had a great tacit understanding with each other. Their cooperation was perfect, and they were stronger than Dai. At that moment, Dai was in danger. Xiaoqing saw that Dai was injured from a distance. Her eyes turned red, and she whipped the ground with her 2 vine whips. As a boost, she bounced out like a cannonball. She quickly landed in the battle circle, and the 2 zombies were shocked. These 2 zombies were the overlords of this area. They led a group of subordinates and lived a carefree life. Then Dai appeared. What should they do when other powerful zombies invaded their territory? Kick them out, or kill them directly. As a result, Dai, who was killing in the zombie crowd, was targeted by 2 zombies. The 2 zombies were hiding in the zombie crowd. When Dai's attention was on the ordinary zombies, the 2 zombies rushed out from the left and right side of him. Dai didn't have time to react. 2 pieces of flesh were scratched off, and one of the zombies almost tore off his arm. Dai hurriedly called for help. Xiaoqing landed on the ground. The vines in her hand seemed to be alive. They drilled out and entangled one of the zombies. She directly pulled the zombie to her side. The other zombie was shocked, and quickly jumped away to avoid being caught by Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing reached out her hand. Her 5 fingers were like knives stabbing into tofu. She easily pierced the zombie's head and took out the zombie's nucleus. The zombie was probably irritated by his brother's death. It screamed and was about to run away. Revenge was a dish best served cold, not to mention a zombie. How could Xiaoqing let it go? She immediately threw out a vine and chased after it. Then, the poor zombie was easily dragged back by Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing opened its skull and dug out its crystal nucleus. Dai was badly injured. There was a scratch on his face. He looked very pitiful. When he saw Xiaoqing coming over, he directly jumped on her and hung his whole body on Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing quickly caught Dai. She held Dai's soft butt with one hand and said, "It feels good." Then she gently pinched it. Yan Qiyue immediately pretended to cough twice to remind Xiaoqing. However, Xiaoqing didn't notice. She held Dai's butt and rubbed Dai's wound. Then she gave the 2 high-level zombie nuclei to Dai for him to absorb. Dai wasn't pretentious at all. After kissing Xiaoqing, he took the 2 zombie nuclei and absorbed them on the spot. Dai's recovery speed was fast. When he absorbed the nuclei, his recovery speed was even faster. The wounds on his body were almost healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Especially the scars on his body, even the scars faded away. Moreover, after absorbing the 2 nuclei, Dai's aura was constantly improving. It rose little by little at a very fast speed. When it reached the peak, there was a short delay. Then with a boom he became the last level 4 superpower possessor in the team. Chapter 365. When Xiaoqing saw Dai curled into a ball and shivered in the corner because of his body, her heart ached terribly. Perhaps Xiaoqing had treated Dai like a child at the very beginning. If she hadn't just become a mother at that time, and if it hadn't been for the fact that Dai was different from ordinary zombies, perhaps she would have killed Dai when they first met. However, after getting along with each other for a long time, their relationship had changed. They had gone through life and death together again and again, and the special situation that happened that time had made their relationship impure. If Dai was an ordinary person who could be responsible for his own decisions, Xiaoqing might have chosen to be with him. However, she couldn't do that now. He had no memory and was just like a child. Everything was taught by Xiaoqing. If Xiaoqing was with him now, what would happen when Dai regained his memory? Would he regret it? Would he think that she was taking advantage of him? It could be said that the relationship between her and Dai was really messy. As for Yan Qiyue, sometimes Xiaoqing despised herself. When Yan Qiyue confessed to her, she rejected his feelings on one hand, but didn't reject his approach on the other hand. It was like a whore who wanted to maintain her chastity. The men around her were all very nice to her, so she couldn't make a choice and could only pretend that she didn't know. However, this couldn't work. Sooner or later, she would have to make a choice. She would choose one of the men and give up the others, or she would choose none and leave with the child. After thinking for a long time, Xiaoqing looked at Dai in the corner and said softly to Yan Qiyu, "It's cold at night. I forgot to bring a quilt when I went out." Yan Qiyu stared at Xiaoqing for a while and then chuckled. "I'll go outside and find some clean beds." Yan Qiyu definitely knew what she was going to do. Xiaoqing felt bitter in her mouth. She asked Dai to play with the little bun at the door, and then walked to Dai. Dai lowered his head silently. There were blue veins on his neck because of his endurance. He didn't know where the unbearable pain came from and how to relieve it. However, he didn't want Xiaoqing to feel embarrassed, so he would rather continue to endure it. Xiaoqing touched his neck and whispered, "Raise your head and look at me." Dai raised his head obediently. There was still some grievance in his eyes and he looked pitiful. Xiaoqing lowered her head and kissed Dai's eyes gently. Then she said, "Close your eyes. Don't look at me." She felt disgusted when she was looked at by such pure eyes. However, Dai was stubborn and refused to close his eyes. He looked at Xiaoqing in a daze, and the grievance in his eyes became more and more intense. Xiaoqing sighed softly. In the end, she reached out and held the source of evil. She said helplessly, "If only you could remember everything. Then she wouldn't have to feel guilty and bear such a burden. She could make her own decision clearly and decisively." Yan Qiyu seriously went out and found several new quilts. Then she hugged the soft quilt and sat at the door for a long time. Occasionally, there would be one or two low gasps and Dai's suppressed roars from inside. Every time this happened, his fingers would grip the corner of the quilt so tightly that his knuckles would turn white. How could he not be jealous? He was so jealous that he went crazy. How could he not be sad? He was so sad that he wanted to die. How could he not be resentful? He hated her so much that his heart, liver, spleen, and lungs were all in a mess. The woman he cherished, the woman he was willing to treat as his queen, was doing the most intimate thing with another man at this moment. However, he couldn't do anything but swallow the sweetness in his throat. Chapter 366. If someone were to pay attention to Yan Qiyu at this moment, they would discover that his eyes were completely red and his expression was twisted into a hideous expression due to the extreme repression. The jealousy, pain, and torment that welled up in his heart nearly drove Yan Qiyu crazy. He raised his hand and fiercely bit his wrist, tearing open his flesh and letting his blood drip out. This kind of physical pain should have brought him the most joy, but at this moment, it couldn't alleviate even the slightest bit of his pain. Yan Qiyu curled into a ball and continuously bit the skin on his arm. In the end, he knelt on the floor and hugged the blanket. He buried his face in the blanket and tightly covered it until the feeling of suffocation caused his mind to go blank. Only then did he slowly let go of his hand and lay on the floor, losing all his strength. After a long time, there was no sound in the room. Yan Qiyu fiercely rubbed his face and tried his best to make his expression look more normal. Then he pulled his sleeves and covered his scarred arm before walking in with the blanket. There was still an ambiguous atmosphere in the room. Xiaoqing was already dressed neatly, and expressionlessly walked into the room with Dai in her arms. Yan Qiyu followed and then took a step before Xiaoqing. He changed the old blanket on the bed, cleaned the dust, and put on the new one. Then Xiaoqing put Dai under the blanket. Dai had already fallen into a deep sleep. Xiaoqing pulled the blanket over him and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. The atmosphere was extremely awkward. Yan Qiyu lowered her delicate eyes. After a while, she tried to find a topic to talk about. "When we reach the capital, I must tell old Master Qin to find a spacious house for me. I want to buy a large bed, the kind that can allow several people to roll around on it. It's comfortable to sleep." "Qiyu, do you like freedom?" Xiaoqing didn't want to disturb Dai, so she walked to the balcony. She had never smoked in the past since smoking was bad for her health. But now, whenever she was frustrated, she would smoke a cigarette. Yan Qiyu's face immediately paled. He leaned against the balcony door and said in a low voice, "Why are you suddenly asking me this?" Xiaoqing holds the railing and looks at the dilapidated house not far away. Her heart is empty and a little sore. "It's too tiring and hard to follow me. You have to run around almost every day. I can't give you anything. It's better for you to live in the Linchuan base. Someone will provide for you. You just need to do the experiments you like and do whatever you want. What are you trying to say? Yan Qiyue's fingertips were trembling. He stared at Xiaoqing, his eyes red with anger and pain. Xiaoqing was shocked. Then she smiled bitterly. I'm not trying to drive you away. I just think you deserve better. Yan Qiyue grabbed Xiaoqing's hand and said coldly, You always think that you're strong and that you're always willing to make decisions for others. But have you ever thought about my feelings? I'm cheap. I just like to follow you. Even if you don't like me, I'll stick to you shamelessly. Even if you hate me, I'll secretly watch you. Yan Qiyue's whole body clung to Xiaoqing like a snake clinging to a tree. He kept moving closer to Xiaoqing. Finally, he gently stuck out the tip of his tongue and licked Xiaoqing's neck. Xiaoqing reflexively wanted to break away, but she smelled blood. She lowered her head and grabbed Yan Qiyue's arm. When she pulled it up, his sleeve loosened, revealing his scarred arm. Xiaoqing subconsciously tightened her grip on Yan Qiyue's wrist. She couldn't help but be angry. She kept making all kinds of food and thought of all kinds of ways to nourish his body. In the end, he ruined himself. Chapter 367. The word master sounded like a Japanese manga. It was filthy and full of filth. Promise me this once. Yan Qiyue looked at Xiaoqing pitifully. Xiaoqing felt her scalp tingle. She had to say, I'll do as you say. For some reason, she suddenly imagined Yan Qiyue wearing a maid's uniform with nothing inside. When she came home, Yan Qiyue came over with a pair of slippers. He changed her shoes and asked her with a flirtatious look, Welcome home, master. Do you want to eat first or eat me first? That's so scary. Can I choose to eat Erdai first? After much difficulty, Xiaoqing finally finished applying the ointment on a certain one. Xiaoqing glanced at him and saw that his upper body had been torn to shreds by Xiaoqing. His pants were also unrecognizable, and one of his shoes was still hanging outside the window. From the front, it looked normal. From the back, it was full of red whip marks. It was very ambiguous. Xiaoqing had no choice but to carry Yan Qiyue and walk into the room. In the end, she stuffed him into the quilt. Yan Qiyue only had his head exposed. He lay in the quilt happily and whispered, It's already so late. Come in and sleep. If you don't eat, Xiaotong still has to eat. Xiaoqing rolled her eyes. She reached into the quilt like a rogue and slapped Yan Qiyue's butt. Then she said, Sleep well. I'll go and cook. After she went out to cook, Yan Qiyue turned over with a melancholy face and stared at Erdai. In fact, as long as Xiaoqing was willing, he was willing to share Xiaoqing with Erdai. Just like before, the three of them lived a good life together. But needless to say, Xiaoqing was the kind of person who would instantly turn into an old cadre when faced with such a situation. She would never agree to such a ridiculous thing. In fact, if it was possible to monopolize Xiaoqing, who would be willing to share her with other men? Even he was unwilling to do that. He just didn't want to lose Xiaoqing because he knew very well that in Xiaoqing's heart, Erdai would always be more important than him. If one day, Xiaoqing was willing to accept both of them at the same time, he would be the one taking advantage. Because the first person to meet Xiaoqing and enter Xiaoqing's heart was Erdai, and he was just a latecomer. On the other side, Xiaoqing finished cooking and fed Xiaotong and Little Bun. She asked Xiaotong to take Little Bun to sleep, and then went back to the house. The two men were lying on the bed, sleeping soundly. They consciously left the middle space, just enough for one person to lie down. It felt as if the first wife and the second wife were waiting for her to go home and sleep. Xiaoqing struggled for a minute, then got into the bed and prepared to sleep. The two men who were sleeping soundly immediately came up to her. One on her left and one on her right. Xiaoqing's mouth twitched, but she couldn't be bothered and fell asleep. The next day, Erdai was the first to wake up. He turned sideways and peeked at Xiaoqing. His eyes were filled with joy, satisfaction, and a little shyness. Xiaoqing cared about him after all. She didn't want him to suffer, and she didn't want him to suffer. Thinking of this, he was satisfied. The next to wake up was Yan Qiyue, but Xiaoqing was the last to wake up. She had done 2 physical activities in a row last night, and she had thought so much. She was dead tired. As soon as Xiaoqing woke up, The two men gave her a good morning kiss from each side and salivated all over her face. Then, she kicked each of them off the bed. Then Xiaoqing got up and went to cook. Yesterday's incident was too sudden, so they didn't have enough work to do. Today they had to continue to work and get more crystal cores to make up for the contribution points. So after breakfast, the group started to get busy. Dai and Yan Chiyue, who were satisfied, were very active today, especially Dai. He was like the wind, rushing here and there. Every time he came back, he would hold a pile of crystal cores and give them to Xiaoqing as if they were treasures. His behavior was just like a boyfriend in love giving gifts to his girlfriend. And he was much crazier than those boyfriends. Every time he came back, he was hurt all over, but he didn't get tired. In the end, he was slapped to the ground by Xiaoqing and calmed down. Okay, now that we're full, it's time to work. The whole S-city was not small. Even if all the paranormals in the capital were called to clean it up, it would take more than a month to finish the preliminary cleaning. After the preliminary cleaning, there would be a second cleaning, and even a third cleaning. They had to check round by round, until they were sure that there was not a single zombie in the whole city. Only then could the survivors in the base move in. So the S-City survivor base almost mobilized all the paranormals in the base to clean up S-City. The expected goal was to move into S-City within half a year. Xiaoqing led her friends. No matter where they went, they would meet the cleaning teams of the S-City survivor base. Generally speaking, she would avoid them. If they met a large number of zombies, she would take her friends and cut them up. Therefore, their fame soon spread to all the paranormal squads in S-City. Almost everyone knew that there was such a squad, known as the zombie meat grinder, crazily cleaning up zombies everywhere. The north of the city has been cleaned up by them. Let's go to the south. Xiaoqing pointed at the crystal cores and said helplessly, Okay, let's inform them. We'll go there first. Yan Hanqing nodded seriously, then gave the signal to Yan Chiyue and the others. After a simple communication, Xiaoqing led Dai and the others to the south of the city. They didn't know whether they were lucky or unlucky, but soon after they arrived at the south of the city, they encountered a large number of zombies. Chapter 368. Those zombies were provoked, so they rushed over from all directions, trying to surround the small group of paranormals in the middle, which seemed to have no sense of existence in the zombie crowd. Xiaoqing saw the group of zombies from a distance. She calculated and found that as long as they cleaned up this wave of zombies, they would have enough contribution points. Without another word, Xiaoqing released a signal flare and prepared to call the rest of her friends over. After all, the more the merrier. However, seeing that the small group of paranormals was about to be drowned in the sea of zombies, Xiaoqing couldn't just stand aside and wait for Yan Hanqing and the others to come over. Therefore, Xiaoqing was the first to take action. She found a balcony on the second floor, then climbed up. After occupying the high ground, she waved her hands, and the vines rushed out quickly with her mind. The vines wrapped around the waists of the paranormals who were drowned in the sea of zombies, then dragged them back. Those paranormals were full of despair and were ready to die, but they closed their eyes and didn't feel the pain of being torn apart. Instead, they felt as if they were riding on clouds. When they opened their eyes again, they saw a woman carrying a child in front of them. The woman was expressionless. She took back the vines, then jumped off the balcony before they could react. Only then did they come to their senses. Were they saved? After saving the small group of paranormals, Xiaoqing joined her friends. Dai jumped into the zombie crowd without hesitation and kept killing the high-level zombies. Xiaoqing didn't rush in. She needed to protect Little Bun and Xiaotong. Xiaotong released a spiritual shield and followed behind Xiaoqing. The shield covered Xiaoqing and Yan Chiyue, so no zombie could break through it. Then two people, one in front of the vines and the other one controlling the air, harvesting the zombies at a fast speed. Soon, Yan Hanqing and the others, who had received the news, arrived. They came from another direction and surrounded the zombies, then began to clean them up. Their combination was like this. Gu Chuan was in charge of freezing the zombies. He didn't want to freeze them to death. He only wanted to make them unable to move for a short period of time. Then Gu Panpan was like a King Kong Barbie. All the ice sculptures would quickly break under her hands. Then Gu Chuan used ice in his left hand and water in his right hand. As long as the water dragon was released, Yan Hanqing's lightning would immediately follow. After all, water could conduct electricity. Therefore, groups of zombies fell instantly. The scene was even more spectacular than Xiaoqing's. The group of superpowered people standing on the balcony purely as onlookers was speechless. They were chased by zombies and had nowhere to run. In the end, they could only wait for death. However, when these zombies encountered Xiaoqing and the others, they were unable to resist. There were at least 1,000 zombies, and the weakest one was at least 800. They were surrounded by a team of superpowered people and tortured like dead dogs. No wonder they could only be the lowest-level superpowered people's team. Half an hour later, Gu Panpan and her friends began to clean up the battlefield. Cleaning up the battlefield was the most annoying job, because the zombies all over the ground were smelly. She had to cut open their heads and take out their nuclei. In the end, Gu Panpan didn't even look at the lowest-level zombies. She would only take out the nuclei of those at least second-level zombies. After taking out the nuclei, Xiaoqing roughly pointed at them and left with her friends. At this time, the rescued team of superpowered people realized that they hadn't thanked Xiaoqing yet. At this moment, Xiaoqing had already taken her friends back. They had almost collected enough contribution points. On the way back, they should be able to clean up some zombies. Chapter 369. This time, if the base still found an excuse, she would leave directly. At most, she would go to the capital to be a temporary resident. Anyway, the capital wouldn't chase them away. It was just a household registration. It wouldn't be a problem. At most, every time she left the capital and returned, the procedures would be slightly more troublesome. That was all. The staff member was very shocked that Xiaoqing and the others returned so quickly. She was very clear about how many zombies those contribution points represented. Many people who tried to change their household registration would be scared away by the contribution points. As for Xiaoqing, how long had she left? She definitely didn't have enough contribution points. Then Xiaoqing clapped her hands. Gu Panpan and the others each carried a sack over. They opened the sacks and poured out a pile of nuclei. How many nuclei could 4 or 5 sacks hold? Anyway, there was a small mountain on the ground. The people who were doing other things around were also shocked. They all turned their heads and stared at Xiaoqing. Their jaws dropped. How many nuclei were there? How many zombies did they kill? Let's count. Xiaoqing found a chair and sat down. Then she lazily raised her chin. If it's not enough, I still have more. The staff member was silent for a long time. Then she called a few other idle people to count together. They counted for nearly an hour. Everyone counted until their backs were sore and their eyes were blurry. At the last number, the staff member was also stuck. Because the nuclei in front of her were not only enough for the contribution points, but also far exceeded the requirements. Something like this had never happened before. She actually didn't know what to do next. Since the contribution points are enough, then help us cancel our household registration. Xiaoqing said lightly. The staff member's hands were numb. She couldn't ask her superior. After hesitating for a long time, she took action and canceled the household registration of Xiaoqing and the others. Xiaoqing waved her hand again. Those nuclei were collected. Xiaoqing, who was free, felt that the air was much fresher. She stretched lazily and brought her friends back to pack their things. She also brought Fu Jingma along. When she stepped out of the gate of the base, Xiaoqing was still a little dazed. This was the first base she had lived in. She used to have a home here. But now, she had no choice but to give up this home and start over somewhere else. Along the way, Fu Jingma was quite silent. However, he was very nimble. He often helped Yan Hanqing with cooking and helping out. Even if Xiaoqing didn't like him, she had to admit that Fu Jingma was a decent person. At least, no one could find fault with him. After leaving the base, Xiaoqing and the others rushed to the capital at full speed. It only took them half the usual time to reach the capital. Old Master Qin had already sent someone to wait at the gate of the capital city. As soon as Xiaoqing arrived, that person ran back to report. Hence, when Xiaoqing and the others arrived at the gate of the Qin residence, Old Master Qin was already waiting there. He went up and hugged little Bun. My baby, let Grandpa see. Have you lost weight in the past 2 days? Little Bun puffed up his cheeks. I haven't lost weight. Grandpa, look. I'm fat and spicy. The old man was amused. Although he really wanted Xiaoqing and the others to continue living in the Qin residence, he knew that Xiaoqing couldn't stay there forever. Hence, Old Master Qin directly said, I've already found a house for you. Do you want to eat first or look at the house first? Xiaoqing immediately said, Let's go look at the house first. Old Master Qin personally brought Xiaoqing and the others to look at the house. The house that Old Master Qin found was not far from the Qin residence. It only took 3 to 5 minutes to walk. From the outside, it looked like a courtyard house. However, there was something special inside. There was a flower bed and a 2-story bungalow. It looked very nice. Chapter 370. At the very least, it suited Xiaoqing's taste. She looked around and saw that there were some common flowers planted in the flower bed. After eating, she could take a walk around the flower bed to relax. In the middle were 3 small buildings in a triangular shape. Whether it was the decoration or the space, they were all very good. After buying some new bedding, she could move in directly. You only need a level 120 crystal core to buy it. Old Master Qin stroked his beard and said proudly, This is my old friend's house. I haven't lived in it many times, and almost everything is new. Xiaoqing handed the crystal core to Old Master Qin without hesitation and said, I've really troubled you this time. I'll treat you to a meal when you're free. You don't have to. Just treat me to a meal today. The old man blinked his eyes and said bluntly. Xiaoqing laughed involuntarily and said, Okay. Moving to a new house naturally had to be celebrated. Xiaoqing first took people out to buy new bedding and some vegetables and fruits. She decided to celebrate tonight. No matter what, moving to a new place was worth celebrating. That night, Yan Hanqing cooked a table full of dishes and brought Old Master Qin to celebrate moving. Moving was a big event, so when they celebrated, they couldn't help but drink some wine. In the end, they collapsed all over the floor. Xiaoqing didn't drink much, so she was still relatively sober. She sat by the side and chatted with Old Master Qin. Old Master Qin went straight to the point. I sent a group of people to keep an eye on the demonic mercenary group all day. In the end, I really found something. Xiaoqing poured a cup of tea for Old Master Qin to sober up and asked, What did you find? Old Master Qin stood up and said as he walked, After learning of the source of the smoke, I sent people to keep an eye on the demonic mercenary group all day and night, afraid that they would do something against human morality. Then news came from there. At the very least, they have the intention to do that thing. Old Master Qin said with an ugly expression, I'm really worried that they'll use living people. Xiaoqing knocked on the table and said, This matter needs to be observed for a while before we can be sure. What I'm most worried about right now is that they might already be making other chemical weapons. Let's wait and see. Old Master Qin sighed. If we discover that the demonic berserk mercenary group is a malignant tumor, I will definitely bring my men to flatten it. I'll pay attention to it too. I have a feeling that things can't be that simple. Xiaoqing said helplessly. It wasn't that she always had bad intentions, and always wondered why those people didn't make a move. It was just that some things were better prepared for a rainy day. Especially since Mad Demon had a grudge against her. She was someone who bore grudges. The vengeful Xiaoqing rubbed her chin, and prepared to pay attention to Mad Demon's movements at all times. After putting this matter aside, Xiaoqing chatted with Old Master Qin for a long time about the little bun's daily life. She also learned that Qin Zishi had gone out to do a mission again. After all, Qin Zishi was the only child of the Qin family. In the future, he would definitely take over the Qin family's current power. If he didn't have some ability, he wouldn't be able to control the situation and support the Qin family. At this point, Old Master Qin was a little melancholic. In his life, he had experienced ups and downs. It could be said that he was proud of his life. In his old age, his son was quite filial and his grandson was also obedient. There was only one thing that stuck in his heart. That was that his son and grandson were like enemies all day long. But there were some things that he couldn't say. He couldn't blame his son for remarrying after his wife died, right? Or blame his grandson for refusing to accept a stepmother. In the end, the relationship between his son and grandson became more and more strained day by day. Old Master Qin was so worried that his hair had already turned white. Usually he wouldn't say these things to Xiaoqing. However, today, after drinking a little, he let go. He patted Xiaoqing's shoulder and sighed. I've never seen Xiaoxi so close to anyone. Qing, if you have the chance, help me persuade him. How can a good father and son live like enemies? I'll remember. Xiaoqing supported Old Master Qin and sent him home. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. She had come back to torment her family. The one who drank the most was Gu Panpan. The others didn't drink much, but unfortunately, they couldn't hold their liquor well. Thus, only Dai and Yan Hanqing were still standing. Even Gu Chuan sat on the sofa in a daze. His face was expressionless, but there was a red cloud on his cheeks. He looked as if nothing had happened, but in fact, he was so drunk that he couldn't tell north from south. In the end, Yan Hanqing was responsible for taking care of Gu Chuan in the room. As she was underage, Xiao Tong, who wasn't allowed to drink, took care of Gu Panpan. The little bun was thrown to Dai. Xiaoqing carried Yin Qiyu upstairs. Chapter 371. As long as her enemy was having a hard time, she would have a good time. With this mentality, Xiaoqing deliberately walked over, ready to see what was going on. One side was undoubtedly the members of the demonic mercenary group, while the other side was a man and a woman. There was even a stall on the ground, selling bits and pieces. Xiaoqing didn't need to look to know that it was most likely related to protection fees. She leaned closer to listen. The woman was scolding. How black-hearted are you? I only earn a few crystal cores a day, and you want half of it? Do you still want me to live? The person from the demonic mercenary group said. Everyone is doing business outside. We take people's money and eliminate people's disasters. You're not the only one who pays protection fees. Why do you think it's too much? The woman sneered and said. We don't need your protection, okay? I won't pay this protection fee. The leader of the demonic mercenary group sized him up and said with a lewd smile. It doesn't matter if you don't pay. Pay with your body. Let us brothers do you once, and this month's protection fee will be waived. The woman spat and covered her chest vigilantly. She pursed her lips tightly. She had several orphans to raise in her family. The money she earned from running a stall was only enough to feed the children in her family. When the harvest was good, she could even add some meat to the children in her family. However, these people clearly saw that they were easy to bully. They opened their mouths and wanted to take half of the profits. If these crystal cores were handed over, those children would starve. Therefore, no matter what, the woman was unwilling to compromise. When the man beside her saw this, he hurriedly said, Isn't it just protection fees? We'll pay. He gritted his teeth and smiled apologetically. Women have long hair and short knowledge. Don't lower yourself to his level. I'll hand it over right now. He opened his pocket and counted for a long time. He counted 10 crystal cores, and was about to hand them over to the demonic mercenary group, when the woman's eyes turned red. She snatched the crystal cores and said aggrievedly, I can't give them to them. Don't forget, little Yang is still sick. I'm counting on today's income to buy him something good to nourish his body. One, give me the crystal core. The man hurriedly urged her, but she just held onto the crystal core and refused to give it to him. She didn't give it to him, but instead, it was in line with the demonic mercenary group's thoughts. He smiled and said, Since you don't want to give me the crystal core, then you can use your body to pay for it. The man hurriedly said, I'll give it to you right away. Then he started arguing with the woman. The person from the demonic berserk mercenary group waved his hand indifferently and said, I'll tell you today. Regardless of whether you give it to us or not, we'll definitely play with this woman. He clapped his hands and said, Brothers, let's go. We'll have meat in a while, and everyone will have a share. The members of Mad Demon beside him began to jeer excitedly, and slowly approached the two of them. The man's expression immediately changed. He shielded the woman behind him, and looked at them warily. Seeing that they were really going to do something bad to the woman, the man whispered to the woman, "If the situation turns bad, I'll stop them. You run quickly." The woman grabbed the man's sleeve and gritted her teeth. "It's broad daylight, and there's a patrol team from the capital. How dare you? I'll let you see if we dare." The captain of the demonic berserk mercenary group took a step forward and pushed the man away. He was about to pull the woman into his embrace. The woman retreated in shock. The man hurriedly went forward to stop her. As he stopped her, he shouted, "Run!" At this moment, the remaining members of the demonic berserk mercenary group had already surrounded him. They pressed the man to the ground and punched and kicked him. As for the captain, he grabbed the woman and pulled her into his embrace. The woman tried to resist, but he easily grabbed her hands and wantonly took advantage of her. Chapter 372. The woman's eyes were red from the humiliation. She kept struggling and looked at the people around her for help. However, the people around her did not help her. Instead, they were watching the show. Some of them were even whispering. The patrol team of the capital city passed by. When they saw that it was Mad Devil's men, they left without stopping for a second. Mad Devil's men laughed wildly. The woman's beautiful eyes were filled with tears. Xiaoqing frowned. She did not expect Mad Devil's men to be so arrogant in the capital city. She also did not expect that people's hearts were so cold. Mad Devil's men molested a woman in front of so many people, but no onlookers helped her. Listening to their words, someone even said, "I asked her to pay the protection fee, but she didn't. I think she's just a slut. She's still hoping to be raped by others." Xiaoqing's eyes dropped to the freezing point. Finally, she took a step forward and quickly waved a vine. It wrapped around the woman's waist and pulled her into her arms. Xiaoqing withdrew the vine and hugged the woman in her arms. She covered her torn collar and said faintly, "It's not good to do this to a girl on the street." Mad Devil's man spat and said, "Who's the brave one who dares to meddle in my business?" Then he looked up and saw that it was Xiaoqing. He had seen Xiaoqing and also saw Xiaoqing beat up the masters of his regiment. His angry face suddenly turned into a warm smile. "I was wondering who it was. It's Captain Xiao. What can I do for you, Captain Xiao?" The onlookers were originally gloating over Xiaoqing's misfortune, waiting to see Xiaoqing suffer, but now their jaws dropped to the ground. Xiaoqing glanced at the man who was still being beaten and said, "Ask your men to stop first." The man smiled carelessly and waved his hand. "Okay, I'll give you face. Stop, stop." When those people stopped, the man on the ground got up with a limp. He wiped the corner of his mouth and stood beside Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing patted the back of the woman in her arms, and then said faintly, "It's just a small matter. Why do you have to make such a fuss? It won't look good. Why don't we just call it quits? My face should still carry some weight." Since Captain Xiao has stepped in, then let's forget about this matter. Captain Xiao, if you're free, why don't you come visit our regiment? Our regiment commander still misses you. That person said with a smile. Xiaoqing faintly responded, "I'll go when I'm free." That person cupped his hands and left with his men. He was a decisive person. He knew that he couldn't win against Xiaoqing, so he might as well give face to Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing wasn't going to give him face. Xiaoqing narrowed her eyes slightly. She was already considering whether to follow them later and see if she could kill them all. After Mad Demon's men left, Xiaoqing coldly glanced around and said, "Let's all go. Don't look at what you shouldn't look at. Otherwise your eyeballs will run away." Those people saw that even Mad Demon's men didn't want to offend Xiaoqing, so they didn't dare to offend her. They immediately dispersed and did what they were supposed to do. Xiaoqing took off her coat and put it on the woman. Then she said faintly, "Okay, it's fine now. Let's go back." The woman clung to Xiaoqing's shoulder and wailed. Her towering breasts pressed against Xiaoqing's chest, making it difficult for her to breathe. She patted the woman's back and comforted her with great difficulty. The woman hugged her coat and thanked her softly. She was really grateful to Xiaoqing. If Xiaoqing hadn't spoken up for her, she might have been violated in public today. Chapter 373. It would be better for her to die immediately. Xiaoqing patted her shoulder and didn't say anything. Before she left, the woman insisted on giving Xiaoqing all the things in the stall. However, Xiaoqing didn't accept it. She had heard clearly that the woman had many orphans in her family. She guessed that she lived a hard life. How could she accept her things? However, the woman was very insistent and insisted on stuffing everything to Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing had no choice but to accept it. Then, she stuffed a handful of crystal cores into the woman's hands and ran away while the woman was not paying attention. She knew that the woman wouldn't accept it, so she decided to run away. After she ran away with air dye, she put the things the woman gave her and the things she bought into the telepathic eye space. Then she entered the city to find Mad Devil's group. However, Xiaoqing found that Mad Devil's group didn't leave after they entered the city. Instead, they hid in a corner and scattered. She wanted to find a place where no one could see them and stop them. Unexpectedly, they stopped. Xiaoqing had to hide with Air Dai to see what they were going to do. Xiaoqing and Air Dai waited in the dark for a while. Soon, they saw the woman and the man coming in. As the woman walked, she thought about what to buy for her children. Before the apocalypse, she was the caretaker of an orphanage. During the apocalypse, the children in the orphanage either died or went missing. In the end, only 6 or 7 of them were left, and she brought them to the capital. She and her brother were very caring and responsible. Every day, they went out early and came back late to earn crystal nuclei to feed the children. Fortunately, the children were very obedient and well-behaved. Every time she came back home, the children had already cleaned the house and were waiting for her. They went to the market first and bought some meat and vegetables at a reduced price. These vegetables weren't fresh, so they were much cheaper. After that, they turned left and right, preparing to go home. Because their house was in a remote place, they turned into a small alley. Mad Devil's group immediately followed them. Xiaoqing suddenly realized that they hadn't given up. It was good that they were fine. She was still thinking about how to find a place where no one could see and take care of all these scumbags. The woman and the man walked in front, while the mad demon people walked behind them. Xiaoqing and the others sat and waited for them to make their move. The more they walked, the more remote they became. Finally, they walked into a deserted alley with no one in sight. Xiaoqing was waiting for this moment. When Mad Devil's group rushed forward and tried to drag the woman away quickly, Xiaoqing and Air Dai attacked. Air Dai's nails were sharp. He quickly jumped into the crowd. With a slash of his finger, he could slit a person's throat. Xiaoqing also held a military knife. Then vines drilled out of the ground and tied people up. She held a knife and went up to kill people. Not to mention the captain of Mad Devil, even the woman and the man were stunned. Then they watched their heads fall to the ground one by one. Blood gushed out from their necks and flowed to the ground in an instant, dyeing the ground red. Xiaoqing didn't even give them a chance to speak. She had already killed all of them. The captain of Mad Devil's group saw that the situation was not good. He wanted to run away, but Xiaoqing stretched out her hand and whipped his head. Xiaoqing was very fast. The man and the woman could only see the cold light flashing. In a few minutes, the ground was covered with corpses. After all, with her current strength, killing these few dregs was like cutting grass. If the grass was a little sharper, she might even be able to cut her fingers. However, this group of people couldn't even touch the corner of her clothes. Chapter 374. The woman was stunned. She probably didn't expect Mad Demon's men to tail them, nor did she expect Xiaoqing to keep an eye on this group of people. She stuttered for a long time before saying, "We're almost at my door. Do you want to come in and have a seat?" Xiaoqing wasn't prepared to go in, but seeing the woman's expectant eyes, she thought for a moment and nodded. Okay. The two followed the woman into her house. They weren't so poor that they had to live in tents. They could still afford to live in a bungalow, but it was a little cramped. As soon as the woman returned home, the group of children surrounded her and shouted. The woman touched their heads one by one and said, "These children are all orphans. They have no one to rely on. It's quite pitiful. Now we rely on each other." She asked the children to call Xiaoqing aunt one by one. The group of children was very obedient. Xiaoqing touched the children's heads and felt very emotional. Looking at these children reminded her of when she was young. Then the woman bought some fruits and distributed them to the children. The fruits she bought were all artificially cultivated in the base. The leftover fruits either had scars or wilted. Anyway, they weren't easy to sell. The stall owner recognized her and sympathized with her, so he sold them to her at a cheap price. At this age, the children lacked vitamins and the like. Eating fruits often was good for their health. Therefore, she often bought some fruits when she went home. Even if they were cheap, the children were very happy. After the children received the fruits, they couldn't bear to eat them. They nibbled on them in small bites. After nibbling, they first licked their teeth and then licked the places where they had bitten. An apple could be eaten for a long time. The leader of the children looked slightly older than the others. He was expressionless as he stuffed the last apple to the woman. Then he whispered, "I don't like to eat this. You eat it." The woman didn't eat it. She just wiped it and stuffed it back to him. Her eyes were red. "Eat it. I've already eaten." Xiaoqing's heart ached when she saw this. It wasn't easy for her and her brother to take care of this group of children. They must have suffered a lot. Xiaoqing flipped through her space and didn't find anything suitable. She only found some candy for the little buns. She took out some and distributed them to the children. The children's eyes were filled with joy and longing, but none of them reached out to take it. They were all very well behaved. Xiaoqing could only say, "Take it and eat. Don't stand on ceremony." The children all looked at the woman. The woman had just been saved by Xiaoqing more than once. She hadn't even repaid her life-saving grace. How could she have the nerve to take Xiaoqing's things? Not to mention candy, which was already considered a rare child snack. She hurriedly refused. "We can't accept it." "Benefactor, you should take it back and give it to the child," Xiaoqing said faintly. "I'm giving it to the children, not you. Why are you refusing? Come take it. It's not much, just 1 piece per person." The woman could only say, "All right, take it. Why aren't you thanking Auntie?" The children were all very excited. They were reluctant to eat the candy and held it carefully. Xiaoqing sat for a while. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, she said, "I still have something to do. I'll leave first. If there's a chance in the future, I'll come to see you." "Benefactor, you're not staying for dinner?" The woman bit her lower lip and said disappointedly, "My cooking skills are very good." Xiaoqing shook her head. "I still have something to do." Then she left with Dai. When she left, the woman and the man took the children to send her off. After Xiaoqing left, the first thing she did was to dispose of the corpses. The corpses were too close to the woman's house. Today, outside the city, the woman had a conflict with Mad Demon's people. Xiaoqing was worried that Mad Demon's people would find out about her. So she specially cleaned up the scene and destroyed the corpses. At least, she didn't want to implicate them. After leaving, Xiaoqing touched her chin and pondered. She had heard the Mad Demon's team leader say something. Originally, it was like this. Someone beside him suggested to fry the woman first and then kill her. However, he sneered and said, "She made me lose face. How can I let her die so easily? Aren't we lacking 2 test subjects? I'll just use her to make up the numbers." Could the test subjects here be related to the previous chemical weapons? Chapter 375. If it was really as she thought, Mad Demon would definitely be conducting live experiments behind the scenes. Perhaps that chemical weapon was just a byproduct of their experiments. Xiaoqing rubbed her chin, her gaze a little cold. She felt that there was definitely something fishy about this. However, no matter what kind of experiment it was, Mad Demon would definitely cover it up tightly and not let others find out. Without accurate evidence, the Mad Demons would never admit that they had done such a thing. What was the evidence? At the very least, she had to find the place where the Mad Demon mercenary group did this experiment, and expose this place to the entire capital. After all, the Mad Demon mercenary group had a very deep foundation in the capital. Moreover, Wu Booping alone would definitely not dare to get involved in live experiments. There must be someone else behind him. This person was very likely to be a high-ranking official in the capital. At the very least, he was at the level of the Qin family. Otherwise, he would definitely not be able to withstand it. If that was the case, then it would be troublesome. Xiaoqing did not stay outside for long. She went back with her air dye. After returning, she first put down the things she bought, and let Yan Hanqing arrange them first. Then, she went to the Qin family alone. She found old Master Qin and chatted for a long time. When she left, both of their expressions were very heavy. Even when Xiaoqing went back to eat hot pot, she did not relax at all. This kind of heaviness remained until lunch break, when Yan Qiyu massaged her shoulders. Yan Qiyu also noticed that something was wrong with Xiaoqing, so she deliberately asked, "What's wrong with you today? Isn't it a happy thing to move to a new house?" Xiaoqing simply told Yan Qiyu about the matter and expressed her concerns. Yan Qiyu laughed at that time. Even if the sky collapses, there are still tall people to hold it up. Why are you so worried? If Mad Demon is really conducting live experiments behind the scenes, then at least the Qin family is the one who has to deal with Mad Demon, right? As long as this matter is exposed, Mad Demon will be hated by everyone. You don't have to bear it alone. Besides, even if there is some powerful person behind him, so what? No matter how powerful he is, can he be the enemy of the entire country? To put it bluntly, what do you care about? The worst case scenario is that we have to leave this place. We have people and food, so we can find a quiet place where we won't be disturbed and live in seclusion for the rest of our lives. Yan Qiyu said half-jokingly, "When the time comes, Air Dai and I will warm your bed. Isn't that great?" Xiaoqing's originally worried mood was also disturbed by him. She immediately laughed and said, "You're right, I'm thinking too much. But can you take your hand away from my chest?" Yan Qiyu moved her hand away from Xiaoqing's chest and said calmly, "I just saw a strand of hair. I've already taken it off." Then he was kicked off the bed by Xiaoqing. Air Dai immediately occupied Xiaoqing's arms and acted cute. After being enlightened by Yan Qiyu, Xiaoqing naturally put those troublesome things behind her and focused on strengthening her ability. Now that she was at level 5, she could find another mutated plant to subdue. Currently, the mutated plants in her hands were vines, man-eating flowers, and dodder. Among them, the man-eating flowers were not very useful, unless they were used to kill low-level zombies. The dodder was only suitable for dealing with humans. As for the auxiliary plant, it was more suitable for large-scale battles. Moreover, it could not be known. Once it was known, the enemy would be on guard, and it would be useless. If she subdued another mutated plant, she would mainly consider the auxiliary plant, which could assist her teammates, or her own ability. Chapter 376. However, there was no need to rush. It all depended on fate. On the third day after moving into the new house, old Master Qin sent a message, saying that nothing unusual had been found. He had sent people to monitor the higher-ups of Mad Devil, but they hadn't found anything related to human experiments. However, when collecting information, the Qin family had discovered that many ordinary people had gone missing. These missing people often didn't have any relatives or friends, didn't have high status, or lived alone. Therefore, after they went missing, no one would look for them. After a while, the existence of these people had faded away. After all, it was the end of the world, and human lives were the most worthless. It was normal for a few people to go missing. Perhaps some paranormal didn't like you and killed you, and you wouldn't be able to complain. However, more and more people went missing, and some people with relatives also went missing. Only then did someone report the case. However, even if the case was reported, it would become an unsolved case because no one could find the missing people. Old Master Qin felt that this matter was very strange. Where did all the missing people go? Even if there were a few people who offended some powerful paranormal and were killed, it was impossible for all the thousands of people to offend paranormal, right? Old Master Qin's intuition told him that this matter might be related to Mad Devil. Xiaoqing also felt that it was related to Mad Devil. After all, if they wanted to do human experiments, they must have test subjects. So, where did the test subjects come from? These people who lived alone and didn't have any relatives or friends were very likely to become the prey of Mad Devil. After all, even if they went missing or died, no one would do anything for them. After reading the message that old Master Qin gave her, Xiaoqing didn't have any clue. She contacted Zhu Machin and prepared to go out with him. Zhu Machin and Wu Buping had been at odds for a long time, so maybe he knew something. As soon as Xiaoqing said that she wanted to go out, two people followed her. One was Yan Qiuyue, and the other was Dai. When they heard that Xiaoqing wanted to go out with a man, they automatically ignored the man's name and insisted on going out with her. Xiaoqing couldn't do anything about it, so when she went out, she brought 2 pieces of sticky candy with her. Zhu Machin had come by himself. They had arranged to meet at a small restaurant, so they could have a meal together. Then, when Zhu Machin arrived, he saw that Xiaoqing was standing on either side of him. There wasn't the slightest hint of a private conversation going on. Xiaoqing helplessly invited Zhu Machin to sit down, and then handed him the menu. They didn't come out to eat, so Zhu Machin ordered 2 of his favorite dishes and then returned the menu. After the waiter left, Xiaoqing chatted with Zhu Machin about the things that had happened to her recently. However, she turned everything she had seen and heard into guesses. Then Xiaoqing said, "I called you out this time mainly to ask if you know anything about mad demons." Zhu Machin thought for a moment, then said, "Because of many reasons, Mad Demon and I don't like each other. You should know that. The more hostile we are, the more we try to understand each other. I was like that for a period of time. I carefully studied Mad Demon, but I didn't find anything wrong with him until recently." "Who?" Xiaoqing asked curiously. "Guan Haishan. You probably don't know this name. He represented one of Mad Demon's 3 vice-commanders, but he died a long time ago. However, I saw him again a while ago," Zhu Machin said with a serious expression. "I felt that something was wrong at the time, but I didn't have time to verify that person's identity, so I couldn't confirm if he was really Guan Haishan." Chapter 377. When he said this, Xiaoqing also felt that something was wrong. She felt that there was something fishy about the appearance of a person who had already been declared dead. If Guan Haishan wasn't dead, then why did Mad Demon announce that Guan Haishan was dead? If Guan Haishan was dead, then the person who appeared now, who was it? After chatting with Zhu Machin, Xiaoqing felt that her head hurt even more. This matter was too complicated. Immediately after, Xiaoqing was attacked on her way home. Because she didn't consider that she would be attacked on the streets of Jingdu, she didn't take any precautions. It was Dai, who had sharp senses, who was the first to pounce on her. When Xiaoqing looked up, she saw that there was a bullet hole where she was originally standing. This meant that a sniper was secretly aiming at her. If it wasn't for Dai, she would have been seriously injured at the very least. As soon as she found the bullet hole, Xiaoqing immediately pulled Yan Qiuyue and Dumbo and leaped onto the wall. Based on the shape of the bullet hole, she could almost guess the position of the sniper in the dark. Therefore, the wall facing the sniper was the safest. This was the same principle as the darkness under the light. Xiaoqing stuck close to the wall. After a long time, she suddenly rolled forward, exposing herself to the sniper's muzzle. She was already prepared to dodge, but the bullet didn't come. Dai was like a dexterous monkey. She quickly found the sniper's original position based on the angle of the bullet hole and other principles. However, there was only a slender bullet shell left. Someone tried to kill Xiaoqing. This knowledge made the 3 of them feel a little heavy. Then, who wanted to kill Xiaoqing? The most likely person was undoubtedly Wu Buping. First of all, she had previously ruined Wu Buping's plan. Then, she had a conflict with Mad Demon's people at the city gate in public. Most importantly, the people who had a conflict with her never returned to Mad Demon. They couldn't be found even if they were alive or dead. In terms of hatred, the one who wanted her to die the most was undoubtedly Mad Demon. Maybe someone had locked on to her when she just went out. That was the reason for the assassination attempt of fleeing thousands of miles away after failing to hit the target. This assassination could be said to be all bark and no bite, but it made Xiaoqing instantly vigilant. If a person like Wu Buping wanted someone to die, he would definitely do anything. This assassination was definitely not the end. It was just the beginning. Xiaoqing was in danger. "Let's go back first," Xiaoqing said expressionlessly. The few of them quickly left the scene, but they did not encounter a second assassination along the way. They told Gu Panpan and the others about this matter, hoping that they would be more careful when they went out. After all, they didn't know if the person in the dark would target Gu Panpan and the others after the assassination failed. It's most likely the Mad Demon mercenary group. Xiaoqing held her chin and said calmly, "After all, we don't have many enemies. The only one who urgently wants my life is probably Mad Demon." Xiaoqing said faintly, "I've been thinking about whether I should participate in the investigation of Mad Demon. At present, it seems that Mad Demon is not ready to give up on me. Strike first and gain the upper hand." Yan Hanqing calmly thought for a long time before saying, "If it's really Mad Demon who did this to you, then it means that they have a guilty conscience. If they have a guilty conscience, it's easy to reveal flaws." Xiaoqing nodded and said, "What I mean is, when everyone goes out, it's best to be careful. Try not to go out alone. Otherwise, I'm really worried." The few of them nodded and promised that they would try their best to stay at home for the next few days and not go out. After telling her friends, Xiaoqing also brought the news to Old Master Qin, hoping that with Old Master Qin's identity, he could find out something. After that, Xiaoqing was not plotted against or assassinated again. The assassination that day was like a flash in the pan, or even not a flash in the pan. She could almost confirm that the person who did this was indeed Mad Demon. After all, not everyone had the ability to assassinate her on the streets of the capital. Xiaoqing felt that being so passive was not her style. After thinking for a long time, she decided to lure the snake out of its hole. If she didn't kill this snake, she would be on tenterhooks when she took her friends out to do missions. She was worried that someone would jump out at this time to assassinate her or her friends. This was too passive. It was completely disadvantageous for her and her friends. However, luring the snake out of its hole was also a skill. Although the Mad Demon mercenary group was very powerful and dared to assassinate her on the streets of the capital, they definitely couldn't do anything in the capital. Therefore, Xiaoqing decided that she would go and be the bait. Soon, Old Master Qin provided her with a beautiful excuse to go out. Chapter 378. Old Master Qin had found some information about the Mad Devil mercenary group's secret experimental base. Although it was just a groundless accusation, it was just right to lure the snake out of its hole. In fact, at the very beginning, Old Master Qin refused to let Xiaoqing go out and take risks. He always felt that it was best for a girl like Xiaoqing to stay at home safely. It was too dangerous to lure the snake out of its hole. However, how could Xiaoqing stay at home safely? She refused Old Master Qin's kindness and only took 2 people with her, Yin Qiyue and Dai. Originally, she didn't even plan to take Yin Qiyue, but Yin Qiyue insisted on following her. She couldn't do anything about it. The place they were going to this time wasn't too close to the capital. It was a base in the north of the capital. This base was very small, so small that it didn't even have a name. Occasionally, when people mentioned this base, they would say that there was a base in the north next to a forest. This base was so small, but it was such a small base that the Mad Devil mercenary group sent people there again and again. According to the information Old Master Qin gave her, there would be people from the Mad Devil mercenary group going to that small base every week. Sometimes it was on the surface, sometimes it was a small mercenary group that belonged to the Mad Devil mercenary group secretly. In short, there would always be people from the Mad Devil mercenary group going to that base 3 to 5 times a month. Such a small base, without any special products or places that others would pay attention to. Why would it attract people from the Mad Devil mercenary group over and over again? Therefore, this base most likely had a problem. Of course, the most important thing was to lure the snake out of its hole. After Xiaoqing left the capital, she took Yin Qiyue and Dai to the small base leisurely. The itinerary wasn't urgent. In addition, she was worried that if they walked too fast, the people following them would be shaken off. Therefore, she treated this trip as a vacation. She walked slowly, looked at the beautiful scenery, rested wherever she went, and cooked wherever she went. It was so beautiful that it didn't seem like the end of the world. The people who were following behind were gritting their teeth. They had already sent a message to their superiors. They had already set up an inescapable net in front of them, and were waiting for Xiaoqing. However, Xiaoqing was leisurely. She didn't look like she was in a hurry, nor did she look like she was going to investigate. She looked like she was simply traveling. At night, Xiaoqing and the others would set up their tents and look for wild animals and vegetables nearby. They would eat different kinds of food every day. Today they would eat barbecue, tomorrow they would eat hot pot, and the day after tomorrow they would eat several dishes with white rice. What about them? He dared not sleep at night, for fear that Xiaoqing and the others would disappear when he opened his eyes. While Xiaoqing and the others were eating delicacies, the few of them were gnawing on dry food. In fact, they used to eat hardtack and dry food that was hard enough to break their teeth. At that time, they didn't feel too bad and were used to eating it. However, when there was a comparison, there would be hurt. Especially when the fragrance of Xiaoqing's cooking drifted to the tip of their nose. The days of gnawing on dry food were particularly unbearable. The few of them couldn't wait to tear apart Xiaoqing and the others alive. If you have the ability to wander around, then leave quickly if you have the ability. If you have the ability to investigate, then do it properly if you have the ability to do so. Originally, the few of them thought that this job was very simple and easy. They bit on the dry food and almost cried. When they thought that they would have to live like this for a few days, they felt even more sad. Xiaoqing and the others' days could be said to be very happy. For example, this afternoon, Erdi caught several pheasants back. They didn't encounter any other wild animals. Xiaoqing thought about it and prepared chicken soup with rice. Chapter 379. The rice wasn't the kind that was grown in the bases, but the old rice that was left behind before the apocalypse. After the apocalypse, some researchers developed a drug that could allow the rice to be cooked 4 times a year. Since then, most of the bases no longer lacked food. At least, there would not be more people starving to death because they did not have enough food to eat. It could be said that most of the bases had enough food and clothing. This kind of rice tasted slightly worse than the rice from peacetime. However, in the apocalypse, being able to fill one's stomach was already the greatest gift from the heavens. Who would care if the rice tasted worse? However, for someone as picky as Xiaoqing, they would definitely eat the old rice from before the apocalypse. When she went out to do missions, she would pay attention to food. As long as there was food, she would put it into her little treasury. Of course, she would eat the best food for her family. After the pheasants were cleaned, Xiaoqing put a lot of mushrooms and wood ears into their stomachs and cooked them in a pot. There was no need to put too much seasoning. Only a little oil and salt, and then a little star anise was enough. After the rice was out of the pot, chicken soup was poured over it. The mushrooms in the pheasants' stomachs were taken out as side dishes. Every grain of rice was wrapped in sparkling soup. It looked very appetizing. Those who were hiding in the dark were biting their own hands. They were about to cry. They also wanted to eat rice, drink chicken soup, and eat chicken. They did not want to eat hardtack. Especially when they smelled the rich aroma, they felt like they were chewing wax. They could not swallow it. After the apocalypse, who would bring pots and pans when they go out? Who would cook rice and stew chicken soup when they eat in the wild? It was so torturous. Most importantly, not only did they have to endure this kind of abuse, they also had to watch the 3 of them being lovey-dovey every day. Their eyes were going blind. Especially that guy called Yin Chiyue. If he did not act coquettishly once in 3 minutes, there would be something wrong with his head. Have you ever seen such a coquettish man? After enduring for 5 whole days, they really wanted to rebel. If it wasn't for the fact that victory was right in front of them, they really wanted to jump out and let Xiaoqing give them a quick death. The only thing that supported them now was that they were getting closer and closer to the trap they had set up. As long as Xiaoqing and the others stepped into the trap, they would no longer have to suffer this kind of torture. On the 6th day, Xiaoqing finally arrived at the nameless base, the forest outside. She heard that there was a pond in the forest, and the water here was not polluted. There were even live fish inside. Xiaoqing was not interested in the pond. She led the 2 into the forest. As long as they passed through the forest, they would reach the nameless base. When they arrived at the base, they could take a shower, change their clothes, and have a good sleep. Xiaoqing was looking forward to it. She bit her nails and thought about what to eat for dinner. On the surface, she looked very relaxed, but in fact, the moment she stepped into the forest, her whole person became vigilant. Her whole body's muscles were tensed up to a perfect state, ready to attack at any time. If something unexpected happened, such as an assassin from the sky, she could react in an instant. As Xiaoqing walked forward, she suddenly smelled a faint fragrance. That fragrance was very faint, very light, and very pleasant to the nose. It was just like her autumn flowers, making people unknowingly fall for it. Xiaoqing's sense of smell was very good. The key was that she and Erdi would not fall for it because they were zombies. Most of the poison was transmitted through blood, and the blood of zombies was pitifully small. Chapter 380. Moreover, all poisons targeted the human body. Zombies were just walking corpses. How could they be afraid of poisons? However, Yin Qiue was different. He was a living person. Among the three of them, he was the only one who would be poisoned. While Yin Qiue was walking, he was suddenly stopped by Xiaoqing. Then Xiaoqing kissed him. Without any warning, she kissed him. Yin Qiue was stunned. His heart was filled with joy like fireworks. It filled his brain and his heart. His blood flowed faster, like a torrent hitting a reef. Then, something was pushed into his mouth by the tip of her soft tongue. Yin Qiue was stunned. He silently swallowed the thing. It was the antidote he made. In order to seal it well, he sealed it in a candy-like shell, and turned it into a colorful ball. This time, it was Erdi who almost went crazy. He screamed and pulled Xiaoqing. He looked at Xiaoqing with grievance. How could Xiaoqing kiss someone else? She didn't even kiss him. Xiaoqing felt guilty under his gaze. Even if she had a legitimate reason for her actions just now, she still felt guilty. In the end, she couldn't help but lean over and kiss Dumbo. After all, she should be fair. Erdi was comforted. He held Xiaoqing's hand tightly. The people who were following them thought, F***CK, it's too much. Let's go. Xiaoqing fed the antidote to Yin Qiue, and heaved a sigh of relief. She continued to lead the two people deeper into the cave. The fragrance gradually faded. When the fragrance was almost faintly discernible, Xiaoqing stopped. What's wrong? Yin Qiue also stopped and asked in a low voice. Xiaoqing didn't say anything. She looked around and then picked up a thick branch. She poked the ground one step ahead. Then the ground collapsed, the pit and the sharp blades at the bottom of the pit were exposed. Yin Qiue looked at the row of sharp blades and couldn't help but feel cold. The few of you are sneakily hiding in the dark, and using such despicable methods. It is truly laughable. You dare to scheme against me. But don't tell me you don't dare to come out and see me? Xiaoqing coldly said. As soon as she finished speaking, a big net suddenly flew towards them. Xiaoqing hurriedly pulled Yin Qiue and Erdi. The three of them rolled on the ground and went under the net. Dozens of paranormals came out from all over the place, forming an encirclement. The ones who acted faster were the long-range paranormals who were still hiding in the dark. Before the dozens of paranormals could get close to Xiaoqing, countless icicles, earth thorns, fireballs, wind blades and water columns had already enveloped Xiaoqing and the others. Xiaoqing raised her hands. Vines weaved into a thick net, covering the three of them. No matter how fierce those paranormals were, they couldn't break the net and fall on their heads. At this time, the dozens of paranormals were close to them. One of the fastest paranormals had already rolled in front of Xiaoqing. He thrust two ice blades forward and stabbed toward Xiaoqing's stomach. Erdi stretched out his foot and stepped on the man's hand easily. Then he kicked the man's head off his neck with his other foot. No one knew how much strength Erdi used, but he kicked the man's head off his neck. His head was almost torn off while he was still alive. Blood spurted out like a fountain and dyed Xiaoqing's trousers red. Xiaoqing's hand gesture changed, and the net of vines above her head instantly dispersed, turning into vines that spread out in all directions. Mad Demon had really put in a lot of effort this time. Among the paranormals who came to surround her, each of them was at least a level 3 paranormals, and a few of them had reached level 4. Don't forget that there were also those long-range paranormals hiding in the dark. Their strength was definitely not weaker than the 20 or so paranormals. Chapter 381. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to withstand such a lineup. Even those paranormals who thought they were the best paranormals in the country and the world wouldn't be able to survive if they fell into such an ambush. Just by looking at this lineup, it really felt like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. However, they weren't destined to be butcher's knife, and Xiaoqing wouldn't be the chicken waiting to be slaughtered. As soon as the ambushers rushed up, they found that Xiaoqing's vines were very scary. 3 of the weakest paranormals were pierced through by several vines. The vines shook lazily, and one of their corpses was torn apart and scattered on the ground. Those with higher levels could still fight, but don't forget that Xiaoqing wasn't alone. Yan Qiyu and Erdai were beside her. Erdai reacted the fastest. He jumped up and didn't go far. He just stood beside Xiaoqing and harvested their heads under the cover of the vines. Yan Qiyu was even more domineering. He stood still beside Xiaoqing like a mountain, his hands shaking as if he was conducting an orchestra. He waved his hands up and down, and from time to time, someone was squeezed into a meat patty by his ability to control the air. Those people looked at him. No. They had to get rid of Yan Qiyu first, so that they could fight Xiaoqing head-on. Then they found that they couldn't even get close to Xiaoqing. The octopus-like vines almost filled the space around Xiaoqing. Occasionally, there were 2 paranormals who escaped and broke through the blockade of the vines. Erdai was responsible for harvesting their heads. They had lost several lives, but they hadn't even touched the hem of Xiaoqing's clothes. The situation is tense. Retreat. Someone shouted in the dark, and those paranormals who had suddenly appeared retreated like a tide. But would Xiaoqing let them go? What a joke! They wanted to assassinate her, so they came to kill her. But when they saw that they couldn't win, they ran away. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Stay here. Xiaoqing sneered. The vines in her hand were like living pythons, choosing people to devour. As long as they were targeted, they would not be able to escape. One of them was a level 4 wind elementalist. His speed was extremely fast, and when he couldn't avoid it, he could even glide for a short time. He thought he could escape, but a vine suddenly wrapped around his ankle. The vines only tugged at him, temporarily immobilizing him. This immobilizing time was only about a second. What could he do in a second? He was able to make Erdai appear behind him and tear his body apart. As a level 4 paranormal, he shouldn't have been killed so easily, but he had lost his will to fight. All he could think about was how to escape, and he didn't consider that he was stronger than Erdai. In addition, he thought that he had escaped from a hopeless situation and relaxed. Suddenly he was killed by Erdai, who was weaker than him. On the other side, Xiaoqing didn't plan to let anyone go. She pretended to be poisoned and said in a low voice, "Let them go." Then her body swayed weakly. Erdai and Yan Qiyu immediately returned to her side. Yan Qiyu's acting was the worst. He held his forehead and collapsed on Xiaoqing's body. I'm a little dizzy. Xiaoqing couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She pretended to be, I'm poisoned. The poison is so strong, but I have to pretend that I'm not poisoned. That person didn't go far. After all, they still had the poison as their trump card. Seeing that Xiaoqing and Yan Qiyu were really poisoned, those people became restless again. The leader waved his hand and stopped everyone from leaving. Then he quietly brought his people back. He approached Xiaoqing and took a look. Xiaoqing's face was a little pale, and her body was a little swaying. She looked like she had been poisoned, but she was holding on and not letting herself show it. He was very surprised and didn't shout anymore. He immediately waved his hand. Go. Here's the chance. Xiaoqing also waved her hand secretly. Here's the chance. Don't let anyone escape. Chapter 382. After everyone entered Xiaoqing's attack range, Xiaoqing calmly clapped her hands. Countless vines drilled out of the ground. They were like bones walking in a graveyard. As long as it was a living person, they would quickly be entangled by the vines. The range was too large. Almost all of the assassins were within the range. The only one who was outside the range was scared stiff. Then, He was easily swallowed by the man-eating flower that drilled out from behind him. The man-eating flower was like a king patrolling his territory. It slowly moved among the people bound by the vines. Whenever it saw a prey, it would open its flower crown and swallow it. The flower was only so big, but after swallowing 6 or 7 people, it burped to show that it was full. Xiaoqing controlled the vines and quickly tightened them into the bodies of those people. There was also Yan Qiyue on the side, who was responsible for the fish that escaped the net that almost broke free. After the poison was injected into those people's bodies through the thorns, it wouldn't be long before those living people became skin bags filled with countless liquids. The vines absorbed the liquids through the thorns. In the end, only a piece of useless human skin was left lying flat on the ground. This was a terrifying scene. If other people saw it, they would definitely be scared to the point of wetting their pants. However, Yan Qiyue was so stimulated that he almost became aroused. He clung tightly to Xiaoqing's body and said as if he was dreaming, "Sometimes, I really want to be eaten by you and become one with you. Then, even if you don't like me, you won't be able to reject me." Xiaoqing smiled and showed 2 sharp canine teeth. "Get lost." He said it as if she had that kind of special hobby. Even if she was a zombie that paid attention to her diet and health, okay? Only brainless beasts and those brainless zombies would eat people like humans, who looked good on the outside but emitted a rotten stench on the inside. Then Xiaoqing cleaned up the scene. She didn't find anything that could prove the identity of these people. Shaking the man-eating flowers and vines, she took Yan Qiyue and Air Dai to the entrance of the base. When they arrived at the entrance of the base, only Xiaoqing and Yan Qiyue were left. Air Dai had already sneaked into the base. Although she was using the excuse of luring the snake out of its hole this time, she really came out to investigate. If she could find what she wanted, of course, it would be for the best. Mad Demon's men would definitely be keeping a close eye on her. The people in the base would also know in advance that she was coming. In that case, why not make her an existence like a target and attract everyone's attention? Then let Dummy go in and investigate. As soon as Xiaoqing and Yan Qiyue appeared at the gate of the base, the 2 guards who were lazily guarding the gate were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. They had already received the news that Xiaoqing had absolutely no chance to pass through the woods. However, not only did Xiaoqing come out, but she also appeared in front of them unscathed. How could they not be shocked and their eyeballs fell to the ground? However, they reacted quickly. One of them quickly turned around, probably running to report the news. The other one came up with a force-flattering expression, then said, "You 2 look very powerful superpowered people at first glance. May I know what business you have in our base?" Xiaoqing talked nonsense with a serious face. "We are here to travel." The corner of the man's mouth twitched. What's so good about traveling in this broken place? There were no mountains in front and no water behind, and it couldn't be any smaller. Why would normal people come here to travel? Chapter 383. Stop fooling around, okay? But he didn't dare to refute. After all, he felt guilty, so he said shamelessly, Yes, we have beautiful scenery here. There are many tourists here, ha 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 ha." The more he laughed, the more dry he became. In the end he stopped. He probably couldn't lie anymore. Xiaoqing asked very kindly, "Is there any procedure to enter your base?" "No," he said reflexively. After saying that, he felt that his reaction was not right. After all, how could he let people in without checking? So he quickly made up for it. "You 2 are obviously powerful paranormals. If you are an ordinary person, you still need to be checked. You 2 don't need to. That's great." Xiaoqing smiled and led Yan Qiyue in. The moment Xiaoqing entered, the man leaned against the door frame. His legs were like noodles, and he was sweating profusely. Motherf***cur. It turns out that lying is so difficult. As soon as Xiaoqing led Yan Qiyue in, they saw a few people coming toward them. The leader was a young man. He looked very handsome, especially his eyes, which were smart and cunning. As soon as he saw Xiaoqing, he strode to greet them. Oh, such powerful paranormals coming to our base is really a great honor. Please come in. What are you 2 doing in our base?" Xiaoqing continued to talk nonsense with a serious face. Traveling. Yin Qiuyue immediately added, honeymoon. The young man was much more shrewd than the gatekeeper. His smile didn't change, and then he said enthusiastically, if it's a trip, then it's best. You two must stay for a few more days. I'll show you around and see our place. You two can also tell me about the changes in the capital. I haven't been there for almost half a year. Xiaoqing asked calmly, how do you know that we came from the capital? The young man was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted. He chuckled and said, powerful paranormals like you too. Where else could you come from? Besides, coming from the south, there's an 80% to 90% chance that you'll have to pass through the capital, so I made a guess. Did I get it right? If you're right, there's no prize, Xiaoqing said expressionlessly. Even the shrewd young man couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed because of Xiaoqing's extremely cold and unoriginal joke. He laughed dryly and said, you're all my friends from afar. I'll treat you two to dinner tonight. You must come. Of course, the most important thing now is to arrange the accommodation for the two teams. Please follow me. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Guan Haishan. Xiaoqing's gaze instantly sharpened. Guan Haishan? The person that Zhu Machan said had died many years ago? She couldn't help but take a closer look at Guan Haishan. He had delicate features and fair skin. If you ignored everything else and just looked at his appearance, he actually looked like a pretty boy. Thus, Xiaoqing silently reached out and touched Guan Haishan's face. It was as fair and tender as it looked, with a hint of warmth. He didn't look like a dead person, and he definitely didn't look like someone who had died many years ago. Yin Qiuyue grabbed Xiaoqing's hand and said with a bitter expression, didn't you say that you only love me? Why are you touching him? Isn't it good to touch me? Xiaoqing continued to talk nonsense with a deadpan expression. There's a fly on his face. Guan Haishan was speechless. Then Guan Haishan walked in with an expression that said, we're serious people. The accommodation that he arranged for Xiaoqing and Yin Qiuyue was right next to his. It was the largest and most spacious place in the entire base aside from the base chief's residence. Chapter 384. Therefore, it was perfect to entertain the two guests. The main point was that he was the base chief. The dinner was on Guan Haishan, and it was quite sumptuous. During the banquet, Xiaoqing had been observing Guan Haishan. Was Guan Haishan really the legendary Guan Haishan who had been dead for a long time? If so, how did he come back to life? Or was he not dead at all? If not, why did he carry Guan Haishan's name? If not for the fact that they were still in someone else's territory, Xiaoqing would have dissected Guan Haishan to see what the hell he was. Although both sides had ulterior motives, the atmosphere of the meal was still harmonious. After the meal, Guan Haishan and Xiaoqing talked about all kinds of things, and Yin Qiuyue was a little sleepy. Xiaoqing carried Yin Qiuyue in a princess hug and said, my baby is sleepy. Let's talk another day. Then, she couldn't wait to get rid of Guan Haishan, this crazy chatterbox. Guan Haishan walked all the way to Xiaoqing's room and almost followed in. In the end, Xiaoqing slammed the door, and his nose was almost pinched off. When Xiaoqing closed the door, she said very impolitely, I'm fine with talking about the scenery with you. Even if you want to hear me having sex with my baby, you want to hear it too. Guan Haishan, who was shut outside the door, rubbed his nose and walked back after a long time. After he returned to his room, he ordered his subordinates to carefully pay attention to Xiaoqing's room. If there were any problems, they would immediately report to him. As for eavesdropping, he wasn't stupid. He didn't think that Xiaoqing wouldn't notice if someone got so close. In fact, anyone who got close would be discovered by Xiaoqing. She had planted several thin vines in the corner of the door. They were not noticeable at all among the weeds. These vines were equivalent to her eyes and ears, helping her to observe the movements around her. Once someone got close or eavesdropped, Xiaoqing would notice. After the arrangement, Xiaoqing carried Yin Qiuyue into the room. Then, she saw that the quilt on the bed was bulging. When she lifted it, Dai was hugging a pillow and looking at Xiaoqing with wet eyes. How's the investigation going? Xiaoqing threw Yin Qiuyue on the bed and said in disgust, go take a shower first. Then she began to change the bed sheets and quilt. God knows what kind of people had slept on this bed before. She wouldn't be at ease if she didn't change the bed sheets and blankets. After changing the bed sheets and quilts, Erdai proudly lay down in the new quilt. He talked about what he saw today with gestures and the tacit understanding between the two of them. Erdai walked around the entire base and found 2 places that were heavily guarded. However, because it was daytime and there were too many people, and Xiaoqing had just entered the city, the security was even tighter. Therefore, Erdai could not sneak in to check carefully. He checked the other places such as Guan Haishan's bedroom. He found something very strange in Guan Haishan's bedroom. It was a pot of fresh blood. Erdai checked it. The blood was very fresh. It was definitely released today. As for other suspicious things, he did not find anything for the time being. He planned to go out again at night. Xiaoqing touched Erdai's head and said, "Don't go out tonight. Guan Haishan's security will be very tight. Wait until tomorrow. Qiyue and I will trick Guan Haishan into taking us out for a walk. That will be your best chance." Erdai nodded obediently. Then he curled his slender body into a ball in Xiaoqing's arms. He even saw Xiaoqing carrying Yan Qiyue back. Not happy. Baby has emotions. Chapter 385. Erdai was obviously a little taller than Xiaoqing, but when he curled himself into a ball and stuffed himself into Xiaoqing's arms, he didn't feel weird at all. It was very harmonious. Xiaoqing had no choice but to hug him tightly as if she was hugging a large bun. Yan Qiyue came back from the shower and saw this scene. He also snorted, then crawled under the blanket and hugged Xiaoqing from behind. Xiaoqing was like the sandwich in a biscuit, the piece of meat in a Ruggiamo. But it felt good to have a cool embrace and a warm back. Xiaoqing didn't fall asleep immediately. She thought for a while and felt more and more suspicious. Why would there be a pot of fresh blood in Guan Haishan's room? Why would he need blood? Xiaoqing wasn't so anxious at first, but now she was anxious to know how Guan Haishan died. Was this Guan Haishan really the dead Guan Haishan? She thought for a long time. When the moon was high in the sky, Yan Qiyue couldn't help but cover her eyes and let her sleep. Xiaoqing closed her eyes, and then the 3 of them fell asleep. The next morning someone approached. Xiaoqing was awakened by the small vines planted at the door. She patted Erdai's butt and asked him to quickly put on his clothes and find a place to hide. Then she turned over and didn't plan to get up. Poor Erdai had no choice but to crawl out of the warm bed by himself and find a corner to hide. The person who came early in the morning was Guan Haishan. Xiaoqing saw him through the vines, but she stretched under the blanket and didn't have any desire to get up. It was so early, and she really didn't want to wake up. She wanted to sleep a little longer, especially when she was in his arms. Then Guan Haishan knocked on the door. Xiaoqing said lazily, "What's the matter? If you have something to say, come in. The door isn't closed. If you don't have anything to say, leave. I still want to sleep for a while." Then Guan Haishan pushed open the door and entered. He walked past the courtyard and through the hall. The moment he stuck his head out, he saw Xiaoqing lying under the blanket. Only her fair arms were still exposed. Yan Qiyue was resting on Xiaoqing's arms with a languid expression. A word popped into Guan Haishan's mind: dog. Male. Female. This kind of adulterous couple who flaunted their affection every day should really be dragged out and burned to death. Xiaoqing didn't feel shy at all. She stretched her head and asked lazily, "What's the matter, Base Chief Guan?" Guan Haishan smiled and said, "Didn't I tell you last night during dinner that I was going to take you 2 out for a walk today? I felt like we were old friends at first sight, and felt like we had known each other in our previous lives, so I couldn't wait to come and find you." Xiaoqing touched her chin and said, "Base Chief Guan, I also feel like we've known each other for a long time. I feel like I used to visit prostitutes in the nightclub before. Ahem, I met a handsome young man who looked like you." Guan Haishan's face darkened, but then returned to normal. He said with a smile, "Is that so?" Xiaoqing crossed her legs under the blanket and hugged Yan Qiyue. She said with a reminiscing expression, "That handsome young man was quite handsome, but he looked like a silver spear wax, so he left a deep impression on me." Guan Haishan's face completely darkened. After a long while he laughed and said, "It's not appropriate to keep chatting like this. I'll wait outside. After you two finish washing up, we'll go eat first, and then go out for a stroll." Then he went out like a small whirlwind. Yin Qiyu held back his laughter for a long time, then leaned his head on Xiaoqing's shoulder and laughed. After laughing for a long time, he said to Xiaoqing, "Your words were quite harsh. It was satisfying." Chapter 386. Okay, get up. Don't you see that people are waiting outside? Xiaoqing glanced at Yin Qiyu, then got out of bed and changed into simple and convenient clothes. Maybe there would be a chance to make a move today. Yin Qiyu also got up lazily. The two of them chatted and laughed leisurely. After brushing their teeth and washing their faces, they went out. Guan Haishan was very patient. He didn't seem to be impatient at all. He took Xiaoqing and Yin Qiyu to eat in a gentlemanly manner. Breakfast was a kind of fruit, called breadfruit. When the fruit was hanging on the tree, it was green and remained the same color until it was ripe. The fruit was only the size of a fist. When it was cut open, it was full of starch. The hard shell of the fruit was peeled off and steamed in a pot. Then it was ready to eat. The taste was not much different from bread. Guan Haishan introduced the specialty to Xiaoqing and Yin Qiyu with a smile. He also took a breadfruit and broke it open. It was very similar to bread. He sighed. Although the conditions in this post-apocalyptic world are difficult, there are many things that we couldn't eat before. Even the national level of protected animals have become food in people's mouths. It sounds like base leader Guan has a lot of experience in eating? Xiaoqing broke a breadfruit and took a bite, then handed the other half to Yin Qiyu. She couldn't be blamed for being careful. It was just that the people around her were enemies. If she was careless, she would be fine. At worst, she could tear space and leave. But what about Yin Qiyu? She had to think about Yin Qiyu. That's natural. I don't care about anything else, but I like to eat. Guan Haishan smiled and said, "I think the most delicious thing in the world is a baby's heart that has just reached 100 days old. It's cut into pieces, half-cooked, and then served with wine. No delicacy can compare to it." His eyebrows were full of smiles, looking gentle and elegant, but it made people feel cold all over. Xiaoqing felt that she was about to lose control of her murderous aura. As long as Guan Haishan dared to say one more word, she would dare to dig out his heart in front of everyone. See if it was black or red, then cut it into pieces and stuff it into his stomach. Guan Haishan seemed to have noticed Xiaoqing's surging murderous aura. He sighed and said, "I was just joking. Why do you take it so seriously? If we're talking about delicacies, I have a few mutated white cranes here. I'll ask the chef to make some for you two to try. Then I'll be waiting." Xiaoqing said faintly. If Yin Qiyu hadn't grabbed her wrist, she really wouldn't have been able to suppress it. Looking at Guan Haishan's faint smile, Xiaoqing was completely sure that he wasn't joking. Xiaoqing could almost imagine how he cut out the hearts of innocent babies one by one just to satisfy his appetite. Such a person, even if he wasn't a zombie, was more terrible than a zombie, because he had already lost his mind, his heart, liver, and conscience. He was worse than a zombie. But now she couldn't make a move, because a greater evil was still hidden behind the scenes. She had to find the demonic mercenary group's experimental base, and then pull out this malignant tumor. Guan Haishan was just a member of the demonic mercenary group. In the mercenary group, there were countless people who were as crazy as Guan Haishan. Looking at Xiaoqing's calm eyes, Guan Haishan was a little surprised, but he didn't say anything. He smiled and accompanied Xiaoqing and Yin Qiyu to have breakfast, and then enthusiastically took them out for a walk. There weren't many people going out with them, only Guan Haishan and a few ability users with high levels. They should also have a relatively high status in the base. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.